The story begins in an abandoned construction place in the middle of the night. We see a boy being surrounded by a group of evil people who are armed with dangerous weapons while hanging above a cage full of zombies who are eager to eat the boy. We learn that the boy's name is Jiang Zioyong. The woman asks if life is meaningless for him now because all of his friends are dead while she asks that. The cold sweat drips all over his face, and Jiang remembers the good times he had in the past with his friends and says to himself that it is all my fault that you guys ended up like that and regrets that things went that way. Jiang gets mad and screams at the evil woman that she deserves a miserable death and that how a person can do something like that to fellow humans. The evil woman with a satisfied face is clinging to a man with a good build, and while she does so, she says that Jiang is angry at her again. The man suggests to torture him slowly so she can vent her anger at him for having such a foul mouth. The man thanks Jiang for the supplies, and because of the supplies they can live a comfortably live for a few more months before the supplies run out. But while he does so, he clicks a button, and so because of that, Jiang falls with full force to the ground in the cage full of zombies who immediately get alerted by his presence. The zombies who are starving are running with full speed to Jiang, and once they get to Jiang, they begin to eat him alive, while we see that Jiang is coughing up blood because of the damage he is getting. Jiang thinks to himself that if he had another chance to live again, he would make better use of it, and that he would make them pay for what they did to him and his friends so that he would never experience something like that again in his life. Jiang, who wakes up again after experiencing something terrible, gets called upon by the same evil woman who betrayed him in his previous life, and while the woman screams that he didn't put her name to the house deed, he couldn't grasp the situation he is in right now because he thought to himself that he had died just a second ago. Jiang looks around and thinks to himself that could it be that I have been reborn before the time of the apocalypse and that they gave me a chain to redo life. He says that in his last life he has been deceived by Jing. We learn that she stole the inheritance left by his parents and made him homeless, and because of that he had to sleep on the streets in the cold weather. We also learn that later that time a global catastrophe occurred, so because of that most people were turned into zombies and plunging the world into chaos. With the help of friends, he survived and built a safe zone to survive the apocalypse until it is safe to walk around again. But he couldn't have known that the deceitful Jing pretended to be a desperate person seeking his refuge and sympathy. In the end, she betrayed him and let the enemy inside to destroy him and his friends. We move back to his house where Jing is screaming at him while saying 400,000 yuan and not a penny less. Jiang, with a serious face expression, stays silent while looking at her. The evil woman gets angry and asks if he heard her. Jiang thinks to himself that he cannot act impulsively now, so he needs to wait when it is the right moment. The evil woman says that she will give him a week time for him to make everything right, but Jiang cuts her off and says fine, I got it, so she needs to go while pushing her to the door. This shocked the evil woman a bit and thinks to herself that when did Jiang become so assertive, and asks if he wasn't her lackey before. Jiang closes the door and turns around. But while he does so, he looks at the clock and thinks to himself that he must prepare for the impending apocalypse that is going to happen in a month's time, because if he doesn't, the same will happen like last time. Jiang gets shocked, and we see a system alert saying the apocalypse system is now active. We also see several system missions saying own a piece of land to get 10 points as system rewards for completing the mission. Jiang asks in a surprised tone what those points can be used for once he completes a mission and how he will be able to use them. We learn that there is a system store displaying different types of items which can be bought with system points he earns from mission rewards. We learn that in his previous life, he saved every penny he got to save up for the evil's woman bride price, which left him malnourished. Jiang picks up his phone and gets a message saying, "Are you full?" And he thinks to himself that the zombies will be everywhere in a month's time, so he should eat good food until that happens. We move to an expensive-looking building. We see nice-looking food on the table, and Jiang asks to himself if this is the legendary Michelin 3-star expensive takeaway. He wonders what a 300 yuan braised pork tastes like. While he puts the food in his mouth, his face expression turns into happiness after trying it. Then he screams that the food is unbelievably delicious. We see that the neck is enjoying his food like a pig, but gets surprised to hear a message from his phone when he is just enjoying his food. We see that he is being called by the friend of the evil women. He thinks to himself if that manipulative woman cried to her friend again, and sighs at the view of the name on the phone. The friend gets angry at Jiang for treating her friend like that, and says that she only wanted him to prove his love to her. She also says that if you can't give her property, how can you love her, which is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. She says that Jiang was testing him a little and that he failed miserable, but if he brings 1 million by the end of the day in cash to them, she might help him to get her back to him. Jiang gets angry at her and says, "Who do you think you are for testing me like that?" and that she needs to get lost. The friend is trying to respond, but Jiang ends the call before she can do so. Jiang lays back on the couch and thinks to himself that he will build the strongest fortress on this land where no one dares to come, but not only is it becoming defensive, it is also built next to a water source and forest, so he will not run out of water that easily. We move to a hall full of people who are walking where the Mig gets greeted by a woman while she asks what he is looking for. The Mig tries to respond to the woman, but gets cut off by a man who we learn is the real estate manager of this place. The real estate manager asks the woman to help the others move boxes in the back because they have a lot of toilet paper that needs to be dealt with. The woman tries to respond to her boss, but gets cut off before she could do so. The real estate manager asks if she has forgotten who taught her everything in this field of work, and with an angry tone sends her to the back to help. The manager turns around and says to the Mick that a broke loser in cheap clothes can't even afford a toilet, let alone a house to life in. The Mick, his face expression turns dark and gets angry, so he asks the real estate manager if he is looking down on people or if he is just an evil person. The real estate manager says that he looks down on dogs like him, and he further says that if the Mick can afford a toilet, he will live stream himself eating shit. Jiang says to the real estate manager that he will find some fresh, hot, steaming ones for him later to eat on stream. Jiang comes back to business and tells the lady worker that he is not here to buy a house, but to buy land for himself, saying this with a confident face. The real estate manager and the lady worker can't believe their eyes when Jiang pulls out a black pay card, and cold sweat drips from their faces. Every customer in the building is shocked beyond belief, so they are asking what Jiang means by buying land and if he knows how much money it will take to purchase a piece of land. Another customer explains that he has never seen anyone buy land so easily. They exclaim that Jiang must be a wealthy person to buy such expensive land. The lady worker still cannot believe her eyes and asks Jiang to please follow her because she will give him the best detailed introduction available. While they are walking away, the real estate manager, with an annoyed expression, says that everyone knows how to brag, but he is not capable of paying for such expensive land. Jiang takes a seat on a chair provided by the lady worker, who further explains that these are the land pieces they currently have available, so Jiang needs to look carefully at which piece of land he wishes to buy. Jiang explains that there is no need to do so, and that he will just explain what kind of requirements he needs for his land. After that, she will need to look for the land that fits his requirements. Jiang further explains his requirements, such as proximity to mountains and water, so he has a water source. He also specifies that it needs to have convenient transportation and should have large buildings on top of it. The lady worker thinks hard before she answers, but is interrupted by the real estate manager, who adds that there is a piece of land in the East District that fits Jiang's requirements. The lady worker asks in a surprised tone why he suggests the East District, as there are still unfinished factory projects there and they cannot sell such land to a client. The real estate manager becomes angry and says that this broke loser's requirements are outrageous and that he is not here to buy an expensive piece of land, but to cause trouble for them. Jiang is surprised to hear that there is a piece of land that fits his requirements and asks the lady worker for confirmation. She responds positively but further explains that there are still unfinished factory projects because the construction team leader ran off, and there is no one to finish the work in time. Jiang thinks to himself that it is a great location because it fits all of his requirements. He further says that if he puts up barbed wire, it will be easy to defend, and the unfinished factories will also save him a lot of money. Jiang tells the lady worker that he will take that piece of land and would like to make a contract now so he can pay right away. The lady worker takes the papers back from Jiang and says in a scared tone that they are sorry for offering something like that. However, after she hears his response, she gets a shocked expression on her face and asks Jiang if he really plans to buy land with unfinished projects. Jiang confirms that he does and says that someone is waiting to eat some fresh poop later, so they should hurry with the contract and down payment, while the real estate manager is sweating cold drops of sweat. A while later, we see the real estate manager holding a receipt and saying that it is impossible. He further says with a dumbfounded face that he really paid a $300,000 down payment and questions how someone can buy such expensive land with unfinished projects on it. Jiang explains to the real estate manager, who still cannot believe his eyes, that he made the down payment and that it is up to him to perform in front of the camera, so he should at least enjoy it. Having had enough, Jiang walks away, while other customers tell the real estate manager that they have turned on the live stream, so he needs to hurry up. Another customer adds that his stomach doesn't feel good, but promises that it will be fresh for him. Jiang thinks to himself that he has spent all the bride money on buying that piece of land, but now he needs to figure out how to get money to stockpile supplies for himself. As Jiang ponders, a fat man walks past him and wonders if that was indeed Jiang. The fat man continues to his destination, but is surprised to see the real estate manager being forced to eat poop after making a deal with Jiang. The real estate manager, in a state of shock, protests that he doesn't want to eat poop, but the people ignore him and keep putting the poop in his mouth. The fat man, now angry, exclaims about what the hell is happening in his absence. We then move to the evil woman, who is meticulously doing her nails. She receives a call from the fat man and answers, greeting him and asking if he remembers her. The fat man cuts her off, asking if she knew that Jiang went to the real estate company to buy an expensive piece of land. The evil woman gets upset and asks how a broke loser like Jiang could afford something so costly. The fat man explains that it was a $300,000 down payment, so he must have used the bride money. The evil woman becomes even more upset, fuming about how Jiang could use her money, but the fat man calms her down and tells her she needs to figure out what's going on with him. The evil woman says that she will expose Jiang online for using her money, and for doing so behind her back. We then return to Jiang, who thinks to himself that buying supplies and building a base requires a lot of money, and he doesn't know where he can get such an amount when he's broke. Suddenly, there's a loud bang on the door, which surprises Jiang. It turns out to be the evil woman with her friend. Jiang asks what they are doing there, but the evil woman cuts him off, accusing him of spending her money behind her back. Jiang is dumbfounded and asks what she means, but the evil woman insists that she knows everything, including how he used her bride money to buy a piece of land, and since it was her money, the land now belongs to her. Jiang becomes angry and asks if she has suddenly gone crazy. He explains that he has plenty of money while slapping her with a stack of cash. As the evil woman looks on in disbelief, Jiang makes it clear that he will never give her anything and asks if he's dumb for knowing that she has been having an affair with the fat man for a long time. The evil woman begins to sweat coldly, wondering how Jiang found out about the affair. Her friend jumps in, saying that it's just a misunderstanding between a couple and that they need to take it easy. Jiang interrupts, stating that there is no misunderstanding and that a cheating woman like her is not his girlfriend. He tells her to go back to the fat man and, irritated by her presence, slams the door in their faces. The evil woman, left outside, thinks to herself about how Jiang knows about the affair since they were very discreet when booking rooms. The evil woman and her friend start to leave, but the friend stops her and asks if Jiang told the truth about her affair with the fat man and why she didn't mention it before they confronted Jiang. The evil woman uses the excuse that they only booked a room a few times. The friend, concerned about how everything has spiraled out of control, suggests that they should go back and come up with a plan to handle Jiang. The evil woman agrees, saying that it is the only thing they can do at the moment. However, the friend thinks to herself that since the evil woman messed up with Jiang, she now has a chance to claim Jiang for herself. After all, they are good sisters, but she's not holding back. We then move back to the construction site where Jiang has bought the land. Jiang is asking a middle-aged man how long the renovations will take to complete. The middle-aged man, clearly perplexed, asks Jiang what kind of force he has offended to require such extensive renovations. Jiang explains that he doesn't need to know the details and that asking too many questions isn't helpful. He then inquires about the cost to complete the work within a month. The middle-aged man tries to explain that it's impossible to finish in a month, but is cut off by Jiang, who says that if he doesn't want to do it, he'll find someone who will. The middle-aged man reluctantly agrees, but clarifies that his concern isn't the timeline, but the cost that will need to be paid. Jiang asks what the price will be, and the middle-aged man explains that because the construction needs to be expedited and the work intensity will increase, the cost will need to be at least this amount. Jiang, surprised, asks if $20 million is enough. The middle-aged man confirms that it is and adds that Jiang needs to pay a $5 million deposit before they can start building. Jiang says he will transfer the money within a week and instructs them to hurry up with the construction. The middle-aged man tries to respond, but is cut off by Jiang, who adds that if the deposit isn't paid, the land will be his, so the man shouldn't worry about the payment. The middle-aged man agrees and acknowledges Jiang's terms. Suddenly, the friend of the evil woman calls out to Jiang. He turns around with a confused look on his face. The friend clings to Jiang's arm and asks him what he is doing there. As the crazy witch's friend clings to Jiang innocently, she asks him what he's doing there. Jiang looks down at her in anger and remembers that she was the one who persuaded the crazy woman to swindle him out of his family's property in his past life. He swore to pay her back twice the misery he suffered, with his face still filled with rage. The friend, on the other hand, was still asking what he was doing there while trying to act like a good girl. She asked him if this was the land he bought and complimented the scenery, calling it a very nice place. She then asked if he planned to build there, while desperately squeezing her melons against his arms. Jiang pushed her away and told her that whatever he was building had nothing to do with her. The girl was completely shocked at his actions. She didn't think a pathetic loser would have the mind to push away a hot chick like her. She asked herself what was going on and didn't understand why Jiang was acting so weird that day. In a normal circumstance, just touching her hand would make him blush and his heart race. But now he was completely irritated by her presence. Even after deliberately caressing his hands, he still had no reaction towards her. While she was angry and nervous, Jiang went ahead to talk with the construction workers and told them that the gates needed to be expanded. The crazy girl's friend called out to him, but he just ignored her like a piece of garbage. Since he had broken up with Jiang, the friend didn't want to miss the opportunity to take Jiang for herself. She saw it as a golden opportunity for the land to be hers. She gritted her teeth and clutched her hand in desperation as she thought about how to make things work in her favor. Back at Jiang's home, he sat down on his couch with the documents of his newly bought land laid out on the table. He said that he had pledged the house to the bank, but it only got him $3 million, which wasn't nearly enough for the first phase of the construction. He needed to figure out how to get more money into his broke pockets. With a serious look on his face, he thought that since the apocalypse was coming soon, it wouldn't matter if he sold the house multiple times, and then concluded that he would do just that. Suddenly, he heard loud bangs at his door and a voice yelling at him to open it. As he walked to open the door, he said the voice belonged to his downstairs neighbor, Grandpa Lai. The old, rickety man was a nuisance who had some money, and he owned the first and second floors of the building where Jiang lived. Lai also wanted to buy Jiang's third floor, but the house was meant to be his matrimonial home, which was why he didn't want to sell it. As Jiang grabbed the door handle, he said that the old man was always causing a ruckus, splashing paint, dumping garbage, placing funeral wreaths, and jamming the locks. He opened the door, and Grandpa Lai immediately accused him of going clubbing the previous night. Jiang yelled back at the man and asked if he was done with his silly theatrics. He told the man that he went to bed before 10 last night, so there was no way he could have gone clubbing. Lai said that he didn't care and that he heard something, but Jiang cut him off and told the old man to stop his annoying rambling. He was fed up with Lai and his crazy stunts. Since the old man wanted the house, Jiang said that he'd sell it to him. The old man was completely stunned and asked Jiang if he was really serious. Jiang looked down at the monkey-faced old man and said that he'd sell it on one condition, and Lai asked what it was. He told the old man that his new house wouldn't be ready until after 6 months, so he needed to stay there for that amount of time. Before that, the old man would have to pay him a total of $5 million for the house all at once. With that, he'd be able to pay off the loan on his new house. Lai was about to respond, but Jiang cut him off and said that if he didn't agree, then he should forget it, while slowly closing his door. Lai stopped the door, pushed his head in, and nervously said that they'd have to sign a contract to avoid any regrets. Jiang looked really irritated as he looked at the ugly old man and told him that the contract wouldn't be a problem. Of course, with a plague coming in a month's time, Jiang had successfully swindled the old fool. He closed his door and cursed the old man out, telling him to stay in his house and wait to meet his maker. Jiang began going through his phone, calculating the old man's 5 million together with the 3 million loan, which came to a total of 8 million. The system popped up and showed that he had completed the first task of owning a piece of land. With that, he claimed the system's reward. The next day, he went into the city to complete the next task, which was to get a year's worth of supplies. He breezed through the shopping mall, collecting many items that could be useful to him. The people there thought he was deranged, and some even said the foolish boy should be avoided. They all stood and watched him as he filled numerous carts with supplies that would last him a year. They didn't understand what he was going to do with all that stuff, and some of them even called him a pathetic idiot who believed in doomsday rumors. Jiang wasn't bothered by their comments because he already knew what was coming. By the time he had gathered all the items, the task was completed, and the system rewarded him with 10 points. As he looked through the system store, he thought about how enhancing attributes would be useful during the apocalypse, but he was too broke for that. The protagonist's supply box was the best thing for him to get with his 10 points. Jiang had a pumped-up look on his face as he convinced himself to get the protagonist's supply box and expand his advantage immediately. He bought the box, and his 10 points were deducted. The supply box popped out with an infinity symbol on the top of it and question marks around its body. When the box gets unlocked, we see the system information pop up and tell him that he got a level 1 space ring. The ring had a huge spatial space of 500 cubic meters, and time in the space was static. Jiang knew the first item he was going to get would be a gold one. With the time-static properties of the ring, it meant that fresh food wouldn't spoil. Jiang was happy about this information because he was a good-for-nothing idiot who didn't know how to cook for himself. After that, the system brought up his next task and told him to get supplies for 10 years, with the reward for that being 20 points. As that happened, the store manager walked out with some guards and asked who was causing trouble in his store. He looked like a mangy mutt as he asked Jiang to identify himself. Jiang recognized him as Yang Tao, his middle school classmate, and a dumb lackey of the school bully, Zhang Shengzhi. Yang always liked to bully weaker people, but couldn't stand up to those stronger than him. We see that in the past, Yang and a couple of other dumb-looking idiots bullied Jiang and asked him for a protection fee. During that encounter, Jiang told them to screw off, and that Sheng should come collect the money if he wants it. Anyway, he was surprised to run into the same blockhead at the store, much less as a manager. Yang told him to return all the items he put in his cart or else. Jiang cut him off and mocked him for still bullying weak people and acting like a useless wimp in front of those stronger than him. He told Yang that he was there to make a purchase and asked if that was how Hurenfa treated its customers. Yang thought he was crazy for actually saying he was going to purchase all those items. He told Jiang to pay for them immediately or else he would get rough-handled. An hour later, all his items were scanned, and the cashier printed out the total. As Yang was told the total price by the cashier, he handed out the payment terminal to Jiang and yelled at him to pay immediately. With a spark of confidence in his eyes, Jiang swiped his card as if he were in a battle. The transfer was successful, but Yang didn't look too happy about that. As he walked away with his guards, Jiang called him back. Yang was already pissed off enough, and he asked Jiang what he was doing. Jiang told him to apologize for his rude behavior, or else he would return all the goods that he just purchased. The store manager felt insulted and told Jiang not to push his luck, but the other customers interrupted him and told him to apologize. They told the blockhead that an apology wasn't much, and if he didn't, they wouldn't let it go. One of them had even started recording and was ready to make Yang a famous piece of shit. Jiang told him again to apologize, and if he did, Jiang said he would buy 10 times the amount of items he had already bought. Yang didn't believe his words, so Jiang told him to bring the POS machine so he could show his balance. He swiped his card on it, and Yang was shocked to see that the pathetic weakling he knew had over 7 million. It was an amount that he had never attained in his wretched life. Once again, Jiang told him to apologize. With no choice, Yang bowed down like a peasant and said he was sorry. As he bowed, Jiang patted him on the head and told him not to be so reckless in the future and to leave room for others. Yang had an utterly defeated look on his face, but he couldn't retaliate since it would only bring more trouble for him. He asked Jiang what he was doing with all the things he bought, and the Mick said he was planning a big venture. Jiang told him that the supermarket's inventory wouldn't be enough for his venture and that he needed a wholesaler. Jiang turned back his head and asked Jiang if he knew some wholesalers since he worked at the store. Surprisingly, the wholesaler he knew was Sheng, the dumb bully who always extorted Jiang in school. Jiang quickly called Sheng and told him that he had found a big client. Jiang looked disappointed at the fact that Jiang was still Sheng's useless slave. He wondered how much gray income the two of them could have made in the supermarket. After that, Jiang and Jiang went to a warehouse. A badass car swiftly drove in and nearly turned Jiang into a cadaver. Jiang was angry at how arrogant the driver was. The driver, Sheng, stepped out of the car, smoking a cigarette and puffing the smoke clouds in the air. Jiang introduced him to Jiang and asked if he remembered him from their high school days. Sheng proved that all the smoke had clogged up his ears as he made Jiang repeat himself. He finally said that he remembered who Jiang was and blew smoke on his face. He referred to Jiang as the guy with a bit of a backbone. He tugged at Jiang's hoodie drawstring and called it a fake designer brand. Sheng said he hated people like him who pretended to be rich when they weren't. Jiang replied by saying that he didn't know if it was a designer brand and that he just bought it from a random store. Sheng grabbed Jiang's head and yelled at him for bringing such a useless guy as a client. He told Jiang that his time was wasted with Jiang's presence and kicked him in the butt. Jiang tried to explain that his client was a really big one, but Sheng didn't believe the idiot's words. He said that he could tell who was rich and who wasn't because he had been in the business for many years, but it was obvious that his brain and eyes were also clogged up from his rubbish cigarettes. Jiang felt his aura wasn't working and said that he couldn't intimate illiterates like Sheng, who looked down on people. Sheng arrogantly grabbed him by the collar and told him to repeat what he just said, but Jiang wasn't fazed by the fool. Jiang repeated himself and said that he looked down on people, but Sheng focused on the part where he was called illiterate. Jiang took it that he didn't mind being told that he looked down on people. Jiang then tried to calm down the situation and said that Sheng's sore spot was when people called him illiterate because he really was one, and he hated being called that the most. Sheng kicked him to the side like a trash can and told him to shut up since he could talk so well. Then he threatened Jiang by saying that he wouldn't leave there standing if he didn't buy a truckload of goods. Jiang whipped out his phone and told the dumb bully to stop tugging on his collar and show him the account he was going to pay to. Seconds later, he wired $1 million to Sheng, who was surprised to see such an amount of money. He looked completely baffled as he read the transfer details on his phone. Jiang let him know that there was no other reason for him to be there. He said he was going to buy $5 million worth of goods. Then he told Sheng to load up the truck with the rest, and he would pay the balance when the goods were ready. Sheng asked him what kind of goods he wanted, and he replied, saying it was rice, salt, and basically anything that was edible or drinkable. He wanted it all. Then Sheng, with a sly smile on his face, told Jiang to follow him. Unknown to Jiang, Sheng planned to give him a batch of food that was nearly expired. They went into the warehouse, where it was filled with barrels and crates of different kinds of supplies. Sheng offered to give him a 10% discount if he took the whole batch. He was going to stoop to any level to get the goods off his hands. Jiang told him it would depend on the quality of the goods as he walked towards the crates. He got to one of the crates, picked up a brown bag, and began to analyze the item. Looking closely at it, he told Sheng that everything was nearly expired, except for the outermost layer. Jiang called him a shrewd man for trying to set him up like that. Sheng was surprised that he was able to figure it out. Caught between a rock and a hard place, he then offered Jiang a 50% discount. Jiang told him that there was no need because he was only using the $5 million to buy the best quality goods. He then said that he had other plans for the expired goods, and Sheng wondered what this crazy guy was talking about. Jiang was going to take the nearly expired goods at the 50% discount, but the payment would arrive a month later. Sheng asked what would happen if the goods expired, and he didn't get his payment, but Jiang assured him that he would mortgage his house to him if that happened. Sheng was still curious as to why someone would buy that many nearly expired goods. He asked Jiang what his channel was, to which Jiang replied that the channel was himself. Jiang told him that even expired goods would be worth a fortune in a few days, as he tapped Sheng's shoulder. A cold sweat ran down Sheng's face, and he looked like he had already shit on himself. With a shaky voice, he asked Jiang what he meant. But Jiang told him to stop asking questions and just deliver the goods, and that he would send him the address later. Jiang suddenly got a call, and the voice over the phone asked if he was selling his second-hand house. As he left to take the call, he told Sheng that he had other matters to attend to and that he should take care of the food. He then walked out of the warehouse. Yang, who had been a complete nuisance, asked Sheng if he had scammed him. But Sheng wondered how Jiang was doing so well since his family was short of anything special. Jiang got back home and met Grandpa Lai, who gave him a bag full of money as a deposit. The old man accepted his condition to leave the house in 3 months and asked to sign the contract immediately. Jiang just looked at the old fool and said that he didn't even inspect the house before making a deposit. He was puzzled as to why Lai was so desperate to get the house and asked the old man why he was in such a hurry. Lai, with a sad look on his face, told Jiang that his granddaughter needed to transfer schools, so they urgently needed the house for residency. He had been looking around the area, but only Jiang's house was up for sale, and he begged Jiang not to back out of their deal. Jiang called out the silly man's honesty and asked if he wasn't afraid that he would raise the price after hearing what he just said. Grandpa Lai was shocked at Jiang's words, and he looked like he could have had a heart attack at any moment. He told Jiang that buying the house would cost him their entire family's savings, but Jiang assured him that he wasn't going to back out. After that, they signed the contract, and Lai was relieved that his granddaughter wouldn't have to sleep in the streets like a gutter rat. He bowed like a peasant before leaving and left Jiang to attend to more important matters. As he left, Jiang thought the old man's kind and honest traits would be his doom during the apocalypse. He quickly stopped the man for a second and asked for Lai to give him the address of where he currently lived. The next day, Jiang returned to the construction site to see how his new place was coming along. As he got there, the construction manager asked for the second batch of funds like a hungry ingrate, but Jiang told him that he would transfer the funds soon. The construction manager showed him around the place as they walked inside the building and said that it was between 70 and 80% complete. They stood under the reinforced doors and walls, and he assured Jiang that they were absolutely safe. Jiang asked about the warehouse and was told that it had already been cleaned up and was ready to be used. With that information, he called Sheng with a happy look on his face and told the dumb bully to bring the goods. Moments later, workers began to fill up the warehouse with boxes of supplies. They happily did their work because their boss was paying each person a lot of money. They were a bunch of broke fools, and they needed some way to sustain themselves in their miserable lives, which was about to be cut short by the apocalypse. They commented on how the place looked like a shelter and said that rich people really valued their lives. Jiang directed them and told them to make sure that the perishable goods were stored separately. After a work-filled day, the underpaid interns started leaving the warehouse when night came. As they left, Jiang stood in front of his tower of supplies and was happy to be done with that task. The system showed that he completed the task of acquiring 10 years' worth of supplies and rewarded him with 20 points. As Jiang looked through the system's store, he noticed that there was a new box item there. It was a box that would give him an awakening ability. Jiang was happy at the fact that he would be able to gain abilities before the dawn of the apocalypse since he was a good-for-nothing weakling. He quickly purchased the box, and it gave him the ability known as the Mind's Eye. It would help to detect if another party was hostile or had harmful intentions. Jiang said that it was one of the most useful abilities in the early days of the apocalypse. He would easily be able to tell friends from foe and deal with them accordingly. After that, the system popped his next mission, which was to arm himself. Jiang had a mischievous look on his face as he said that was what he had in mind. It was nighttime at the market, and all sorts of vendors and customers could be seen prancing about, looking for the next best rare item to purchase. For a bunch of fools who were clueless about the apocalypse, everyone there seemed to be eager to get something important. Jiang walked through the streets of the market as he listened to the idle chatter of everyone around. Customers were trying to determine if items were real or fake, and the vendors were tired of dealing with annoying idiots. They all had stern looks on their faces, as if they were all trying not to be intimidated. Jiang's attention was caught by someone who was trying to haggle like a thief. The customer wanted an item for $300, but the vendor couldn't believe the sheer stupidity and asked who did business like that. When he turned back, he saw that the idiotic customer was none other than Lai Shuxing. The fat piece of shit was trying to bring the price of an item from 2,000 to 300. He threatened to leave if the vendor wasn't going to sell it to him at that price. The vendor, trying his best not to punch the idiotic fool in the throat, was trying to calm things down so that they could come to an agreeable price. Eventually, he agreed to sell it to Shuxing at that ridiculous price, just to get him to stop yelling. One of the random people on the streets looked at the vendor as if he were a complete noob who had no spine to stand his ground. Jiang was curious as to why Shuxing was buying fake bracelets on the black market. For someone who likes to brag a lot, Shuxing was nothing but a cheapskate and a silly one at that. He called his crazy ex-girlfriend, Jiang, a fool for falling for a scam. The way he stared at Shuxing showed that he was irritated by the guy's presence. He went back to looking for more items and saw a display of fine swords and machetes. Each blade looked like it could take anyone's head off with ease, but it wasn't just him who stared at the blades with such intent. There were other people passing by who seemed to like slicing and dicing things. Jiang smiled and was happy that he found what he was looking for. He met with the vendor and began examining the blades. With the way he held one of the blades, you'd think this nincompoop actually had experience as a swordsman. Jiang asked the vendor if he had any hard stuff there, and by hard stuff, I'm pretty sure he wasn't talking about their sausages. Anyway, the vendor didn't want to waste time with a loser like Jiang, so he showed the knife sharpener to him and told him to get to work if he wanted something hard. The vendor said that he could also buy a baton if he was too lazy to sharpen the blade himself. Jiang, with a mean look on his face, still insisted that it wasn't hard enough and he needed something harder. Yeah, this whole conversation was getting really sus. The vendor felt annoyed by Jiang's words and questioned if he was there to cause trouble. He had a camouflage jacket on, which gave the impression that he was a veteran who was skilled in taking care of wastes like Jiang. His facial expression changed when he suddenly got a credit alert on his phone. Jiang had transferred a substantial amount of money to the vendor, and this calmed him down. The vendor was shocked to see how much an ugly kid sent to him, and he couldn't believe it. Jiang, with a happy expression, showed that it was he who transferred the money and told the vendor to pipe down. He was serious about getting something hard to satisfy himself. You know what I mean? After that, the vendor told his assistant, Xiaoxiang, to watch the stall, while he directed Jiang to somewhere private where he could get the hard stuff he'd been craving. He said that talking outside was inconvenient and pointed the way to Jiang. Rather than a warehouse, they went to what looked like a casual person's home. I guess he was serious about giving Jiang that hard stuff. I'm just joking. When they got inside the building, the vendor showed him different kinds of homemade guns enough to at least kill chickens, and they were quite cheap too. The ammo and gunpowder were also cheap, but Jiang said it still wasn't good enough for him. At this point, the vendor thought Jiang was just an annoying crackhead. The look on his face said he was tired of dealing with such an annoying customer. He then showed Jiang a replica revolver, and its performance was almost the same as an active-duty handgun. Regardless, it was still stupidly cheap. It was obvious he was trying to sell cheap stuff and keep a huge amount of change for himself. Jiang was furious as he looked down on the vendor and told him that it still wasn't acceptable. He had paid the vendor a lot of money, so all this cheap stuff only got him irritated and upset. He told the vendor that the 200,000 that was sent was just a prepayment. The vendor thought this sick kid had lost his mind, but Jiang, with a stone look on his face, said he was buying weapons worth 2 million. What kind of apocalypse could this loser possibly be preparing for? The vendor had to ask what he did for a living because no normal person would come to purchase that much heavy weaponry. He was probably scared for his meager life as well and didn't want to get on Jiang's bad side. Jiang basically threw his question aside, saying that it was his subordinates who usually handled trivial matters and the vendor didn't need to ask many questions. Seeing how serious Jiang was, the vendor went to lock the doors and close the windows to make sure no one could see or hear them. Luckily, Jiang didn't get defiled after that. The vendor told him that he had come to the right person. He whispered to Jiang that he would give him an address and also told him to write a list. Jiang was to go to the location the day after tomorrow at midnight to complete the transaction, and he was meant to bring cash. As he left the building, he heard the fat fool, Shuxing, calling his name. Just the sound of the idiot's voice made Jiang look like he was going to throw up. Shuxing was surprised to see him on the black market and said that must be why he had been spending lavishly recently. The foolish degenerate obviously wanted all that money for himself. He also called out Jiang for ignoring Jing and also said that his family must have had some heirlooms. He assumed Jiang was there to sell off his inheritance and said he had been watching too many marketing accounts recently, in a mocking tone. Jiang didn't even look bothered by Shuxing's degrading statements. Rather, he saw it as the perfect time to test his mind's eye ability. He activated it, and a blue flame surrounded his eye. He was able to see different icons on the top of the vendor and Shuxing's heads. The icon on the vendor's head looked friendly, while that of Shuxing showed he was definitely an enemy. Jiang was glad that the ability worked as expected. He turned back and began to mock the fat piece of garbage, saying that he must have tricked Ku Jing by buying fake and second-hand goods in order to clap her cheeks. Jiang said that she was just his second hand, who was worth the fake items. Shuxing was infuriated by Jiang's words, but he made no attempt to deny that he was a broke loser who had to buy cheap items to clap a girl. The vendor asked Jiang if they knew each other, and Jiang said that the fat fool was an enemy. Thanks to the money he was offered, the vendor began acting like Jiang's silly lackey and said that he'd handle Shuxing, while Jiang went ahead to handle other matters. The rest of his dumb friends came out to tag along in the drama, and Jiang told him not to kill the fatso since he still had plans for him. Shuxing was already shaking like a chihuahua as the goons slowly walked toward him. He tried to put up a tough attitude, but it was no use. The arms dealer swung out a baton, which made Shuxing try to negotiate with them. The proud fool was now a sacred wimp, and he had probably pissed on himself. The arms dealer and the rest of the goons gave Shuxing the beating of a lifetime. Laying defeated on the floor, Shuxing swore to get back at Jiang for humiliating him. 2 days later, in the dead cold of night, Jiang unveiled his new guns, which were delivered in a truck at his warehouse. With his new arms acquired, his task was complete, and he was awarded 10 points by the system. As a bonus reward, he was also given 2 physical enhancement potions. Rather than an actual potion, it was basically just a syringe, which meant that the system was obviously forcing this guy to do drugs. Anyway, Jiang noticed that the potion's effectiveness was as good as the one in the store. He brought out one of his hands and lifted the other in the air as he got ready to inject it into his body. As he used the potions, he gritted his teeth in pain, and his eyes went completely white. It was either he was feeling ecstatic like a junkie who just got his daily dose, or this idiot was about to die. Luckily, his second chance at life wasn't about to be wasted so easily. According to him, the average adult male had a strength of 5, but with the added 2 points from the potion, he got a 40% increase. He rolled up his fists as if trying to get a good feel of his new strength, but he still looked like the same old useless loser. Still, it wasn't enough for him. Jiang opened up the system's store and looked through the 2 items that were left. He decided to maximize his advantage by buying an extra physical enhancement potion. While injecting himself, he winced like a little girl who was getting touched inappropriately. The extra potions brought him to a total of 8 points, and he had 60% more power than the average person. All that was left was to find a punching bag to test his new powers on. He looked to the wall by his side and saw some bags of cement and a couple of rods on the floor. As he picked up one of the rods, he looked like he was still unsure about his new powers, but there was only one way to find them. He pulled out some sweet Bruce Lee moves as he kicked the rod, bending it and sending it flying towards the wall, which also cracked the wall. With his new strength, Jiang felt like a big bad boss who was not to be messed with in any way. He was sure that he would be able to easily handle early-stage zombies when they showed up. After that, he decided to store the guns in the space ring since they wouldn't take up much space there. The weapon crate shrunk and flew into the ring as if they were being sucked in by a black hole. The day after tomorrow was going to be the first day of the apocalypse, so Jiang was trying to make sure that there was nothing else he had to do. Flashing through his mind was the memory of Grandpa Lai, telling him about his granddaughter and how they needed his house for residency. Jiang felt stupid that he couldn't completely ignore the old man's unfortunate situation, even after suffering at the hands of human treachery. He decided to send the man some essential supplies for the apocalypse, but it was up to the old fool to survive or become a tombstone. Jiang said it was going to be his repayment to the old man for funding his apocalypse plan. The next day, a black car pulled into what looked like an abandoned neighborhood. Jiang stepped out of the car and said that whoever was going to look for this filthy slum definitely needed some kind of GPS. He had to walk all the way to the top floor where Grandpa Lai was staying so that he could deliver the supplies. From the looks of it, the old man was a broke fool, and Jiang said he had a screw loose in his head for living in such a cheap place. Before knocking on the door, he remembered to take out the supplies from the space ring first, so he wouldn't have to get into a long explanation with the old man. After setting out all the boxes, he knocked on the door, and Lai crawled with his rickety legs to open it. As he opened the door, he already started saying that he would pay his rent by next Monday, but he had no idea who he was talking to at first. It was obvious that there were barely any working brain cells left in the man's head. Seconds later, his eyes sparked open, and he recognized that the person in front of him was Jiang. He was even more surprised to see the huge number of boxes that surrounded Jiang. It's as if his eyes finally started working well, and he asked Jiang what all the boxes were for. Jiang said he'd explain later and asked the man to help move all the boxes into his home. They had to be discreet about it so that the nosy neighbors wouldn't think they were doing something illegal. Jiang ended up doing most of the moving because the old man was an incompetent piece of garbage. Lai wished he was like the young folk because of how much stamina they had. He said young folk like Jiang could move so much stuff in one go without being out of breath. But I'm pretty sure moving just one box nearly sent him 6 feet under. When they were done, check the room and the door to make sure it was sturdy enough. While he was still looking around, he told Lai to listen well to what he was about to say. The old man's eyes and memory were barely working well. He was definitely expecting too much if thought that Lai's ears would be working normally. Jiang told Lai that he should use the supplies wisely and that they would last him for half a year. Then a picture caught his attention, while the old man was telling Jiang to keep the supplies in his room because they would be moving in soon. Jiang didn't even pay any attention to the old man's words. He had given him the supplies, so if the old man wanted to continue being a fool, Jiang wasn't going to be bothered. The photo that caught his attention showed Grandpa Lai and a very beautiful, brown-haired young lady. He immediately recognized the pretty girl as Shanshan, probably one of the girls he had clapped in his previous life. Jiang didn't think she'd be the crazy old man's granddaughter. He asked Lai if his granddaughter was named Meng Shanshan, and Lai was surprised that he knew who his granddaughter was. He asked Jiang how he knew, considering that he had never mentioned her name to him before. Jiang's face suddenly turned very cold and serious as he asked Lai where Shanshan was. Now that his hot chick was in the picture, he couldn't possibly abandon her and her grandfather. Lai told him that she was still studying back in their hometown, but once they were able to move into Jiang's house, she would come around. In a flashback, we see Jiang and Shanshan sitting together, while she puts her head down and cries like an annoying brat. She complained about being the one who caused trouble for her grandfather. Jiang had a sad look on his face as the scenes flashed through his mind. He remembered that in his past life, Shanshan said her grandfather risked his life to rescue her from the captured high school. The old man was able to save her, but he met his maker afterward. With that in mind, Jiang swore to make it up to her so the same events wouldn't be repeated. He was determined to survive and make babies with her this time around. He told Grandpa Lai that he couldn't move houses anymore. Lai had a shocked expression and probably thought that Jiang had completely lost his mind. He thought Jiang was going to change his mind and begged the boy to reconsider his decision. But Jiang told him that the world was going to fall into ruin the next day and humans were going to be plunged into a cesspit of suffering. The house and his granddaughter's school status weren't going to matter in the face of all this. The old man was confused by Jiang's words. He had a perplexed look on his face, thinking that Jiang was probably the one with dead brain cells. Either that or the boy was mentally disturbed. Jiang told him to guide them to the school where Shanshan was so that they could pick her up, and he would have a new place arranged for them. The only expression that ran through Lai's face was confusion and fear. He told Jiang that he sounded like a deranged idiot, and that he had no idea what Jiang was talking about. This wasn't making things easy for Jiang. He needed to look for a way to explain things to the stupid old man, but he was too old to understand anything, and they were running out of time. He had a very worried expression on his face as he thought about how to handle this. He began to explain the concept of hunger to the old man, something the broke fool should have been quite experienced with. Jiang explained how miserable and terrible the people in the famine era would be. Grandpa Lai didn't understand how such a tragedy could befall those in such a peaceful and prosperous world. He didn't believe such a thing would be possible in their time. With no other choice, Jiang pulled out his ring and sucked all the supplies back into the spatial dimension. The old man was frightened as this happened, and he didn't even know what to say. In the blink of an eye, all the items were gone from the room. Lai asked him what happened to the items and assumed it was some kind of dark magic. A powerful aura surrounded Jiang, and in a forceful tone, he told the old man that he had superpowers and that he could see the future. He said he wanted to live, and he also wanted Shanshan to live so they could make all kinds of happy noises together. Then he stated that from then onwards, everything was going to be done according to his words, and Lai would not be able to defy him. He demanded to be told where Shanshan's school was because there was barely any time left. They left the house and got into Jiang's car, but Lai was still looking at him as if he were an insane villain. They sped through the streets and quickly arrived at the school. Jiang asked the old man if he knew Shanshan's class and dormitory. Luckily, the old man knew, which made him quite useful. I can't imagine the horrors Jiang would have put him through if he decided to be incompetent. They hurried to wherever she was, with the clock ticking away fast. Meanwhile, in the middle of the school, we see a bunch of delinquents harassing a girl for some silly reason. The girl who was being harassed was Shanshan, and she was getting whooped by some illiterate bullies because they were jealous that a guy liked her. Rather than trying to get some good Riz skills so the guy could notice them, they decided to take it out on the poor girl. Shanshan was looking bruised up, and she tried to explain that the guy, Zheng Xiaochen, was the one who liked her, and it was all one-sided. Sadly, the stupid bullies were too dumb to understand, and they thought she was just making excuses. They kicked her and pulled her hair to make up for their low self-esteem. They didn't believe that Xiaocheng was the one desperately trying to get into Shanshan's pants, and they felt she was silly for mocking him. Shanshan made some happy noises as her hair got pulled. I guess that's the kind of thing she was into. A voice called out to the stupid bullies and asked them what they were doing, but the girls looked unimpressed by whoever showed up. Luckily for Shanshan, it was Jiang and her grandfather who came to save her. One of the bullies recognized Lai as the useless grandfather. Shanshan was surprised to see her grandfather and asked why he was at her school. You'd think she'd be grateful to him for coming to save her pathetic butt. He screamed at the bullies and told them to let go of his granddaughter. Jiang, who stood behind him, looked like he was itching to give the stupid girls a piece of his strength. The other dumb-looking guys approached Lai, and they were holding knives and bats. They told the old man not to get into young people's business and he should stop meddling in their affairs. The blonde-haired leader walked up to him with his knife, but the old man stood his ground. Grandpa Lai rushed the guy with the knife and said he was mannerless for bullying his classmates. While they tussled, someone else was about to send Lai to the pearly gates with a bat. He swung down, aiming for Lai's neck, but Jiang caught the bat and saved the man from an early grave. Can you even call it an early grave? Jiang mocked the bully for being so young and learning how to be a thug. Of course, the bullies weren't fazed by Jiang's weak looks. They saw him as another pathetic, broke guy who was trying to act tough and assumed he was Shanshan's little brother. With one kick, Jiang sent one of them flying through the air like a frisbee. Thanks to that, the bullies took him seriously and said that he must have been trained, so they decided to gang up on him together. Their silly tactics didn't rattle Jiang, as he kept a serious look on his face. The idiotic bullies had no idea what they were in for. After circling around him, the one with the bat rushed and swung his weapon, but Jiang quickly ducked to avoid the attack. Thanks to his enhanced strength, his reflexes were off the charts as well. He grabbed the idiot by the collar and tossed him to the ground with one hand. That one quickly got his lights knocked out as his head slammed into the ground. The last one rushed Jiang with his dagger. Jiang weaved through the attack and kicked the fool to the ground, nearly sending him 6 feet under. After he was done dealing with them, the girls started shaking in fear and asked him what he was going to do with them. They thought they were about to get defiled, but their milk jugs just weren't Jiang's type. He slowly walked towards them and started smacking them around the place. He slapped one of them, and she couldn't believe that he would raise his hands on a woman, but to Jiang, she wasn't a woman. She was just an ugly gorilla who liked to bully others. The other one got her hair pulled, and she screamed for Jiang to let go of her. He suddenly pulled out a knife and held it to her neck. Tears filled her eyes, and in a shaky tone, she asked him what he was about to do. He quickly swiped the blade across her neck and gave her a befitting end. Jiang had a devilish look in his eyes after what he had just done. Shanshan and the other bullies couldn't believe their eyes. They didn't think he could have done something so horrid. Anyway, just to let you guys know that he didn't actually kill her. Yeah, I got you with that one. The girl knelt on the ground and cried out because Jiang had cut her hair. Any more cuts, and she would have been looking like a bald freak. To her, it was the worst possible fate she could have imagined. She yelled out in a thundering rage at Jiang, cursing him out and saying that she wouldn't forgive him for daring to cut her hair. Jiang looked down at the fool as if he were her god and told her that long hair would only drag her down. She didn't understand his words, and she was too angry to comprehend anything at the time. He told her that she would understand in a few days and that short hair might actually save her life. Just like that, he killed all hair-pulling fantasies she probably wanted to satisfy in her miserable life. With the girls dealt with, he called Shanshan and her grandfather and said that they were leaving. Shanshan was confused and asked where they were going. Moments later, they got into the car and left. In the car, Shanshan was shocked to hear that she wouldn't be going to school anymore. Her grandfather explained that there was going to be a huge famine soon, and because of that, there was no need for her to sit and listen to boring lectures anymore. They had to do their best to survive. While Shanshan was trying to understand Lai's crazy words, Jiang had a sly smirk on his face as he drove. He was most likely happy that he had secured someone he could feed his chocolate to, and he couldn't get the fantasies out of his head. On the other hand, Shanshan told Lai that he shouldn't be listening to scam calls because she thought the old man had completely lost his mind. Considering his age, she wouldn't be wrong. She argued with him and asked how much he got scammed for, and Lai tried to explain that he was telling the truth. While the two continued arguing, Jiang was just happy to have Shanshan and promised himself to protect her this time around. Then he butted into their conversation and told Shanshan that he was the one who informed her grandfather about the famine and it wasn't a scam. She was just surprised that the idiot could actually talk. Then she nervously asked who he was. Jiang introduced himself and told her that she could call him Brother Yang. Shanshan then thanked him for dealing with the bully, Sun Y, and teaching her silly bunch of stupid lackeys a lesson. Jiang told her not to worry about the fools because they barely had many days left in their useless lives. Shanshan was confused and asked what he meant, and if there was really going to be a famine. Then Jiang told her that he used the concept of famine to explain the situation to Lai's deteriorating brain. Shanshan was glad to hear that because she was sure that there couldn't be a famine in such peaceful times. But he burst her bubble by saying that it was the apocalypse that was actually coming. Now, she was even more nervous as she exclaimed the word apocalypse in confusion. Jiang claimed that the time was right and told her to check her for short videos and the news. He said if nothing unexpected happens, she should start seeing signs of the situation. Shanshan quickly picked up her phone and came across the news of someone with rabies who was biting others like a mad dog. From her phone, you could see some officers trying to hold down the despicable zombie-like person as he struggled to break free. More news came up about a strange smog, and they highlighted that it had a strange smell. Kinda like Jiang, considering that the piece of garbage hasn't showered since the beginning of this book. More screams could be heard from Shanshan's phone as people complained about getting bit by others. Her face was struck with fear. She couldn't believe the horrific events that had started to take place and thought it must have been a dream. She was completely shocked to hear Jiang say that these were all expected events and that they were signs of the beginning of the apocalypse. This idiotic girl still stupidly asked if there was really an apocalypse, even after seeing the signs on her phone. I guess stupidity runs in her family. The next day was going to be the first day of the apocalypse, and the toxic smog would cover several provinces, including Province B. The unknown toxic smog was going to affect all living creatures, and chaos would be slowly unleashed in the world. Slowly, a significant portion of humans would be turned into repulsive, brain-dead zombies, and everything would fall into ruin. People would try to run for their meager lives, but their efforts would be completely useless. Eventually, the zombies would catch up to them and turn them into a McDonald's Happy Meal, eventually turning the innocents into filthy zombies as well. Jiang said that Shanshan should obviously know what zombies were. She obviously did, but the whole story was still too unbelievable for her. Being popped out of school to being told about an apocalypse was the last thing she expected in her life. While they were stuck in a traffic jam, Jiang told her that she would believe everything in the coming weeks. By then, she would cling onto his sausage like a desperate ex-girlfriend because he would be her only saving grace. Jiang was pissed about the traffic jam and noticed that even the emergency lane was stuck as well. Grandpa Lai was worried, so he asked Jiang what they would do if the zombies caught up to them in the traffic jam. But Jiang said that it wasn't that urgent yet. But he started to think about it and the possibility of a small outbreak occurring while they were trapped there. While he was thinking about it, some crackhead driver tried to cut in front of his car. Jiang blocked him but suddenly slammed the brakes, nearly sending the old man and Shanshan flying through the windshield. Jiang was angry that the reckless driver was trying to cut into the emergency lane without a turn signal. He wasn't going to let the idiot get away with such tomfoolery, so he started driving like Vin Diesel in the Fast and Furious movies. The car kept trying to cut into the lane, but Jiang wasn't about that life. The stupid driver pulled up beside him and started yelling and cursing him out, but Jiang ignored the foolish ingrate. Lai tried to advise Jiang to let it go because the idiot looked like a rich and powerful person, but Jiang was ready for the worst. If the driver eventually wanted to step out and cause trouble, he was ready to beat him to a pulp. The traffic was over, and the cars finally started moving after being stuck for almost an hour. Shanshan noticed the reckless driver from before was still trying to cut in front of them, and she told Jiang to watch out for the fool. At this point, Jiang was enraged, and he was ready to send the idiot to the deepest depths of hell. The two of them got into a crazy road rage, and Lai begged Jiang not to stoop to such a foolish level. With the apocalypse already approaching, Jiang wasn't bothered about traffic rules anymore. He said that there was no need to be lenient with a stupid, reckless driver. He eventually broke free, causing the driver to nearly crash by the side of the road. The ugly fool got out of his car, cursed him out, and called the police, telling them to find the plate number of Jiang's car. He was probably another spoiled rich brat who loved to spend daddy's money recklessly. He swore to get back at Jiang and teach him not to mess with certain people. At nighttime, Jiang got back to his new safe house. As they stepped out of the car, Grandpa Lai and Shanshan were amazed at how massive the place was. Shanshan even said the place was a bit too much. It definitely won't be when she and Jiang finally get down and dirty. Jiang told them to get some rest because the following days were going to be a whole lot tougher. The next morning, Jiang was standing in front of his huge window while sipping a hot cup of coffee. Shanshan stepped out of her room, yawning and stretching, while stating that it had been so long she slept so well. She finally didn't have to wake up like she was at a boot camp and get ready for morning classes. Jiang looked glad that she was able to rest well. I guess he couldn't satisfy his urges yet since her grandfather was still with them. He then asked to go with him so they could check out the fortress together. You'd think they'd finally have some alone time, but Lai the Great Fool just had to tag along. As they took a tour of the place, Jiang told them that the walls were made of reinforced concrete and the remote-controlled gate was also made of pure steel. The only way to break through was with heavy weapons, so neither zombies nor regular humans could easily get in. He reminded them that without his permission, no other person was allowed into the fortress except the three of them. Shanshan asked whether they were going to let survivors who made it to the fortress just die like a bunch of wastes. He ignored her question and told her to follow him like a lost puppy. He explained how people's true intentions would be unpredictable during the apocalypse. Being too kind would get them swindled, and humanity's dark side would fully show itself when the events begin to unfold. They walked to the back of the building and came to a place he called the buffer zone. They were shocked at how huge the place was. We could see some lined up crates and a small building that was to serve as a shelter. Jiang told them that if survivors came while he was away, the buffer zone could provide them with temporary shelter, but they would not be allowed into the fortress until he returned. Next up, he said he would take them to the food storage, which was the most important thing in an apocalypse. If they weren't able to find food, Jiang and Shanshan might have to start eating themselves, not in the way your dirty mind was thinking about. He said he'd show them the areas of food that would be distributed sparingly. As he led them into the food warehouse, he suddenly stopped to look back at them. He activated his mind's eye ability to make sure that Lai and Shanshan were truly on his side. The two of them looked confused because they didn't understand what he was doing. Jiang saw two happy emojis at the top of their heads and figured it was a sign of trust. It was his first time seeing it, which meant that the old man and his granddaughter completely trusted him with their lives. Jiang brought out a weapon crate from his ring and told them that weapons were the most important thing during an apocalypse. Isn't it supposed to be food? Anyway, he told them to make sure to keep it under their control and not let it fall into enemy hands. The two of them were shocked as they picked up a shotgun and a crossbow. It was as if they had slowly started realizing how serious things were. Lai, with a stupidly dumb look on his face, agreed to keep the weapons under control. With that done, the system popped up and showed Jiang that he had completed the task, which was to reunite with Shanshan. It then told him to find and rescue his former companion, Zhang Kai. Jiang was shocked to see that the system was trying to bring him and his comrades back together. As they stood by a huge glass window, he saw a huge arrow pointing him in the direction of where Kai was. It proved to be very helpful because he was really worried about how to find his comrades. While he ran out, he told Shanshan and Lai to remember everything he had told them and not to violate his instructions. Shanshan asked where he was rushing out to, and he said to recruit more people to strengthen their team. Somewhere in the city, at a KTV building, a group of ugly-looking guys were enjoying a karaoke session, and their table was filled with a crazy number of drinks. Two of the guys stepped out to go to the restroom. The fatso had to guide his gray-haired friend, who was probably too drunk to walk straight. He told his friend to eat slowly and not to choke. I hope it's not what I'm thinking. The gray-haired dude then told his fat friend that he would pack something for him to take back. It's definitely looking too suspicious between these two. When they were done with whatever the hell they were doing to each other in the restroom, they started heading back to meet up with the rest. The gray-haired guy mistakenly bumped into a girl who was walking with her man. He apologized, but the stupid man, feeling like it was a good time to show off his foolishness, kicked him and told him to watch where he was going. The gray-haired dude flew through the place, and his friend, who had never spent a single day in the gym, came to check if he was okay. We find out that his name is Zhang Kai, the companion who Jiang was looking for. Zhang Kai's friend yelled at the stupid man for hitting his friend just for a simple mistake. The man felt insulted that a fat piece of garbage was talking back at him, and said that it was rare to meet someone who dared to try such. He grabbed the fatso by the collar and jacked him up. While Zhang Kai tried to apologize for the misunderstanding, he begged the guy not to hit his friend. Some loser who worked there stepped out of the restroom and saw the commotion that was going on. He was barely recovering from an upset stomach, and he caught a cold. He tried to calm down the fight, but the man just felt even more disrespected. He was really trying hard to show off to a girl that he had probably never banged. He told the worker that his boss wouldn't dare try to grab his clothes, but here he is doing the unthinkable. The unfortunate underpaid worker told Kai and his friend to leave while he dealt with the man. The man told the worker to call his boss and questioned how they had the audacity to disrespect him. He even threatened to throw the karaoke bar out of business. Kai and his friends ran like little wimps back to their companions, who asked them if they were chased by a dog. Kai explained that they bumped into a drunk fool when they left the restroom, and the man wanted to mess them up. Luckily, they got saved by the waiter. If not, they would have gotten really bruised up. One of the guys got angry that the fatso didn't fight back, saying that their mechanical engineering class had never backed down from a fight. It was obvious that he was the idiotic musclehead of the group, and he was always ready for a fight. He said he'd make a call to gather more of their brothers to take care of the thug. The brother with a white jacket looked at him like the dude had completely gone bonkers. Zhang Kai told him to stop showing off because they were graduating in less than a year, and the last thing they needed was more trouble on their hands. He told them to enjoy the music and keep dancing. Sadly for them, the thug walked into the place with more of his retarded lackeys and the waiter, who looked like he was barely conscious. Zhang Kai and his crew were shocked to see the pitiful state of the waiter. The idiotic thug pointed towards them and told his goons to teach them a lesson. Zhang Kai and his friends got rounded up, and they were made to kneel with their hands behind their heads. The waiter, on the other hand, was seriously shaking from the pain he was in. The stupid musclehead demanded to make a call, but instead got a bottle smashed on his head for speaking when he wasn't allowed to. He started bleeding from his head, and Zhang Kai screamed his name, Chen Chong. All this was just because a foolish thug wanted to show off to an ugly girl who looked like a troll. Meanwhile, Jiang arrived at the karaoke bar, but was completely clueless as to what was going on inside. The butlers at the door ushered him into the venue as he said that the world was ending and his friend still had the mind to sing. While the music was going on and the lights of the club were still spinning, Jiang was bleeding from his head like a waterfall after one of the thugs smashed his head with a glass bottle. The thug still held the broken bottle as if he were prepared for another round, while Jiang Kai called out to his bleeding friend. The foolish guy who was doing all these theatrics for his ugly girlfriend asked her if she was feeling better after seeing him display the traits of a deranged idiot. He put his arms around the girl and tried to get a good feel of her arms, but she wasn't impressed by his lame heroics. The girl was more pressed about how her nail polish looked as she asked him what was there to feel better about. She told him that he wasn't even dealing with the actual person who bumped into her. The thug, with the brain of a buffoon, turned his attention to Jiang Kai. He held the broken bottle to Jiang's face and slowly approached him. The girl still showed no signs that she was the least bit impressed with all this tomfoolery. Meanwhile, Jiang was slowly getting up and trying to recover from his bleeding head. Out of anger and frustration, he quickly reached for an ashtray and wanted to use it to make the thug pay for nearly sending him to his maker. He tried to smash it on the guy's head, but the other goons held him back. One of the brain-dead thugs called him a little punk and mocked him for being foolish enough to try and fight back, given his unfortunate circumstances. Jiang struggled to break free, but it was no use because he was too much of a weakling to them. The thug, who was nothing but a simp, felt irritated and angry that Jiang was bold enough to try and fight back. He didn't expect him to have so much guts, and he gritted his teeth fiercely in anger. As the other goons held Jiang down, their leader smashed another bottle on Jiang's head. Yeah, he definitely can't be coming out of this one. The wine splashed everywhere, and broken bottle pieces could be seen flying through the air. Jiang was knocked out cold, and he slumped to the floor like a sinking rock. Jiang Kai and the rest of his friends were completely shocked at the horrid event they just witnessed. You could see the anger on one of the friends' faces, while the other two tried to call out to their friend. At this point, there wasn't any need for them to hold back anymore. They had tried their best to be calm and respectful, but it ended up quite bad for them. Jiang Kai and the fatso rushed towards the leader of the thugs to send him 6 feet under, while the last guy stood at the back, holding a baseball bat. On the other hand, one of the waiters was hiding in the corner and shaking like a pathetic coward. In the background, you could hear the thugs calling Jiang Kai a punk, and they were furious that he just wouldn't back down. Things got out of hand, and everyone was ready to go all out. Lao Si was told to grab one person and make sure that they never see the light of day again. While everyone was brawling and being a nuisance to the club, the waiter was in a lot of pain, and he groaned as a lot of cold sweat ran down his body. His body was shaking a lot, and you could see some purple veins pop out from his back and his forehead. It was like he was slowly having a bad mutation of the Hulk. At the same time, Jiang Kai was dishing out knuckle sandwiches to all the idiots who tried to mess with him and his friends. He swung hard at one of the goons, but the guy was quick enough to dodge, while another person was coming at him from behind. The waiter, who was shaking like a junkie earlier, now looked completely possessed, with blood dripping from his eyes. His eyes had gone completely white, he was sweating profusely, and he was drooling like a hungry beast. As he looked at the bunch of fools who were fighting, all that ran through his mind was how good they would taste once he got a bite. He roared out like a filthy beast and rushed to join the fray. Whatever caused him to mutate made him run at an inhuman speed, but it was probably at the cost of whatever was left of his brain. The waiter, who was now a mindless zombie, quickly grabbed one of the thugs and forcefully held onto him. The thug tried to break free, but the zombie displayed a terrifying level of inhuman strength. The filthy thing quickly took a bite of the thug, who was now in agonizing pain. The dumb girl, who was the cause of all this mayhem, screamed in shock as she saw the zombie take a large bite out of the guy. The thug called the waiter a dog and tried to get him to let go, but it was hopeless for him. He then called out to his guys so that they could help him. A man who was watching the whole thing couldn't believe his eyes. It was as if he had been thrown into those horror movies, and he was the side character who was completely useless. All he could do was put his hands behind his head. He opened his mouth wide and screamed, hoping for it to all be a dream. Meanwhile, the thugs were trying to hold down the zombie, but his crazy strength left them shocked. They still had yet to clock that they weren't dealing with an average human being. The zombie let go of the person he was clinging to before and went ahead to bite the other unfortunate soul. The guy called him a good-for-nothing and was surprised to see that he was really acting like a deranged dog. As the thug struggled to break free, the zombie knocked him down to the ground, while his teeth were still firmly planted into his arms. The thug was baffled at how insane the zombie's strength was because his arm was about to be completely ripped off. As the struggle continued, a hand suddenly popped out and grabbed the neck of the zombie from behind. As the person lifted the zombie into the air, we saw that it was Jiang performing such crazy feats with his physical enhancements. Everyone else in the room was surprised that he could lift up a fellow human with such ease, and even with one hand. Jiang slowly squeezed the zombie's neck, and his face didn't look too happy about what was going on. With blazing anger, he smashed the zombie onto the glass wall and held his face to it so that the shards could cut him up slowly. Then he turned to the rest of the idiots who had been causing a ruckus and told them to stop. Everyone else there was still freaked out by Jiang's crazy strength. The man who was a snack for the zombie looked beyond frightened as he looked up at Jiang. He said that the deranged zombie was as strong as a bully, but he didn't understand how Jiang was able to pin him to the wall with one hand. It was as if he was also angry at himself for being a pitiful weakling. The stupid thug leader screamed out and asked Jiang who he was. Rather than thank the protagonist for saving their miserable lives, this brickhead thought it was wise to yell and act like he had some use. The other pathetic goon beside him was in a lot of pain because the zombie had taken a chunk of his shoulder for dinner, and it looked like the wound had become infected. Jiang ignored the idiot's question and turned to Zhang Kai. He wanted to make sure that his friend had been bitten by the monster and also make sure that he was alright. Zhang Kai told Jiang that he was fine, but with a perplexed look on his face, he asked Jiang why he was worried about him being bitten. Jiang ignored that foolish question as well and, with a mean look, told his friend to come with him. There wasn't any time to waste, and he needed to assemble his past comrades as fast as possible. While Zhang Kai stood up to go, that idiotic simp pulled him back and said that they weren't done. A literal zombie just wreaked havoc in their midst, and his men were severely wounded, but he was more bothered about how much he had to impress some ugly girl, who he had probably never laid before. Anyway, as he was being stupid, one of his goons, who got bit on his shoulder, suddenly started coughing and complaining about his spinning head. His boss asked him what was wrong, and he thought it was just a cold, but he was about to find out how his foolishness would be the end of him. Jiang had a look on his face that said he already figured out what was happening to the thug. He wasn't fazed at all, but just kept his composure and waited for the worst to happen. The purple veins began to break out of the thug's neck and head. He gritted his teeth in pain and held onto his wound, but it was already too late for him. He tried to explain that he just had a runny nose in the afternoon, but got interrupted by Jiang. The protagonist asked him if his shoulder was bitten by the zombie while still holding onto the monster's neck. The zombie was still fighting to break free, but Jiang had that dog in him, so he wasn't breaking free anytime soon. The thug was confused and wondered how the zombie's bite had anything to do with the way he was feeling. While still fighting the pain, he told Jiang that he was bitten and asked what that had to do with anything. You could see as the purple filthy mutation was slowly creeping up from his back to his face. The fact that no one else in the room could figure out what was going on showed why they must have died like fools in Jiang's past life. Jiang started to analyze the whole situation and thought to himself that the thug was probably already infected before he got bitten. Now that he was bitten close to his head, he was likely going to mutate soon, since the signs had begun to show themselves. Jiang dragged the already deranged zombie and was heading out, while the H-Tug leader asked him what he was doing. The others were staring at him, and they hoped that he would give a reasonable explanation for all his strange questions and actions. Jiang got to the door and tossed out the mutated filth like he was a pile of trash. Then, he quickly shut the door. The zombie started to bang and claw at the door, trying to force himself back inside. Jiang, on the other hand, was glad that zombies were too dumb to figure out how to open doors yet. Because of this, they were all safe in the meantime. As he dusted off his palms, he turned to the others and saw that they were all looking at him weirdly. It was obvious that they were waiting for him to start explaining himself, but Jiang was taking his sweet time. I mean, it's his show, so you can't really blame the guy. His mood shifted, and you could see the killing intent spilling from his eyes. At this point, the demons of hell were scared of what this idiot was about to do. He cracked his knuckles and asked Jiang Kai which one of the stupid thugs he needed to take out first. However, Jiang Kai had no idea who this crazy kid was, and he asked him if they knew each other. The leader of those thugs was looking completely pissed off because he was being threatened. He rushed towards Jiang, telling him that he was getting cocky, and he attempted to land a punch on the pretty boy's face. That punch looked like it was taking years just to hit, and Jiang wasn't the least bit bothered by the idiotic simp. Before the guy's hand could halfway through, Jiang swiftly grabbed his head and shut him up before he spewed any more rubbish from his mouth. With his Hulk-like strength, he smashed the man to the ground, knocking him out in the process. The other foolish goon who was bitten on his shoulder rushed towards Jiang in an attempt to attack him. He cursed out Jiang and said that he was definitely asking for it. Sadly, he was no match for Jiang's Bruce Lee moves. Jiang gave him a hefty punch to the nose. Now the idiot's nose wasn't only runny but bleeding as well. Jiang barely used his true power, but he was able to send the guy falling straight to the ground. As the guy got knocked to the ground, Jiang maintained his fighting stance like he was a character in a fighting game. Meanwhile, the goon was knocked out cold and was foaming at his mouth. His partner rushed to his side and asked why he was acting so pathetic after just one punch. His body began to shake and wiggle, which showed that the mutation had begun, but his partner had no idea what was about to go down. On the other hand, Jiang was feeling like the next best thing since sliced bread, as he asked if there was anyone else who wasn't convinced and wanted to get a taste of his fists. He said that they were welcome to try. After everything, he told Jiang Kai to take his friend and wait for him outside the private room. Jiang Kai wiped his chin and proceeded to do as he was ordered. He and the fatso slowly lifted Jiang and carried the pathetic guy out of the room. The thug leader and his goons attempted to leave as well. His lackeys carried the injured one and helped him to the door. As they got to the door, Jiang told them to hold it, and he blocked their way. The leader stupidly asked him what he was doing, and the girl, who the leader was trying so much to clap her cheeks, was shocked as well when Jiang stopped them. Jiang told him that all the drinks must have gone to his head and made him forget his own name. He told the man that he almost got his brother killed, but the leader only looked more irritated and scared at the same time. The leader told Jiang to stop spouting nonsense and ordered him to get out of his way. Jiang was fed up with the buffoon's arrogance, and he pushed him back. His eyes were blank, making it look like he had gone into feral mode. The leader cursed him out and said that he was going to die after what he just did. I guess the drink really did clog his head because he quickly forgot that Jiang held up someone by their neck with just one hand. Before he could get up, Jiang quickly left the room and locked the door behind him. The guy got up and demanded for the door to be opened, saying he was going to skin Jiang alive for being a punk. Unknown to him, he was about to face a more deadly and disgusting opponent. The goon who was bitten on the shoulder earlier had been completely consumed by the mutation. His eyes were red, and his senses were no longer with him. You could have possibly searched his eyes for a sign of himself, but there was no humanity left in him any longer. The mutated thug let out a feral roar and began looking for the closest person to feast on. His other comrades couldn't hold him down, and they were confused as to why he was acting so feral. They called out his name, Hat, and asked him what he was doing. Obviously, they were too blind to see that Hat was hungry and looking for the next best meat to devour. Jiang stood on the other side of the door and listened to the chaos that ensued inside the room. The guys banged on the door and struggled to get their zombie friend off their leader, but it was only a matter of time before they became mindless monsters like him. Voices could be heard screaming for help, but Jiang wasn't bothered about them. One of the workers approached Jiang and nervously asked what was going on and if he needed help. Jiang told the man to lock the door completely and not let a single soul inside if he knew what was good for him. He then told him to call the police and the hospital to inform them that there was a patient with the rabid flu inside the room. The worker either had his ears clogged up or he was just shocked that Jiang mentioned the rabid flu. Jiang's words left him frozen and frightened on the spot, and he didn't know how to process it. While he was still spacing out like a fool, Jiang yelled at him to get to it immediately. The worker responded and hurriedly brought the door keys. His hands were nervously shaking as he tried to get the key into the lock and lock the door. While he was struggling with that, Jiang left with Zhang Kai and the rest of his friends. Chong was still unconscious as they carried him and followed Jiang. The worker who was supposed to be locking the door stopped what he was meant to do because he felt troubled by the sound coming from the other side. His colleague approached him and asked why there was so much chaos going on. The worker told his colleague that Jiang told him about a guest who had the rabid flu, but the colleague didn't believe that there was actually a rabid flu. On the other hand, the worker was surprised that his silly colleague even knew about the disease. Then the two of them headed to the security room so they could check the live surveillance and see what was really going on. They ran through the hallway as quickly as they could, but when they got to the room, they saw the horrors that had been unleashed. The security man who was watching over the cameras couldn't even believe what he was witnessing. Their ugly faces showed that they couldn't stomach whatever the hell they saw on the screens. The security footage showed that the thug leader and his goons had all been turned into brainless zombies. They feasted on each other, and the leader was finally able to get a taste of his girlfriend. The girl lay dead on the floor, and her eyes looked like she had also gotten infected with the disease. The workers quickly called for the police, but I wondered if they were calling them to become part of the feast. Meanwhile, Jiang and his friends had finally gotten outside to where he parked his car. He told them to hurry up because the club wasn't safe anymore and things were about to get way worse than they already were. They got into the car and quickly drove out that night to somewhere safer. Inside the car ride, Zhang Kai thanked Jiang for saving them and asked him who he was. Chong was still knocked out like a light, and the others were eager to know who Jiang was as well. Jiang introduced himself and told them that he was hired to protect them and that they didn't need to know who the employer was. They just needed to be grateful that he bothered himself to save weaklings like them. One of the guys seated at the back asked Jiang if the rabid flu was actually real since rumors from the internet had debunked it. Jiang turned back to answer him and completely abandoned the fact that he was driving. Maybe his powers also gave him eyes at the back of his head. Anyway, he acknowledged the idiot's stupid question and asked him if he thought everything that they just witnessed back at the club was all an illusion. The second-hand Choji realized he was telling the truth and nervously asked if there was any cure for the said flu. Jiang told him that the disaster wasn't about to go away anytime soon and the world was already at its wit's end. It was only going to get worse, and they needed to be prepared for anything. They suddenly heard someone scream from outside the car, which made them confused as to what was going on. With the windows wound down, they looked outside and saw a zombie attacking an innocent civilian who was screaming for help. The civilian was convinced that it was the effects of the rabid flu that were affecting the zombies. Jiang then explained to them that the current situation was just a localized breakout. It was still on a small scale and in the early stages, and most victims were still in the incubation period. He said it wasn't going to take long before things spiraled out of control on a larger scale. If they wanted any hope of surviving, they needed to follow his orders. In unison, they all agreed to do whatever Jiang said, except for Chong, who was still doing God knows what in his dreamland. With his new comrades secured, the system popped up and notified Jiang that his task was complete, and it awarded him an extra 20 points. He couldn't wait to check out the new items in the store and further enhance himself. Bear in mind that this guy is still driving with all this going on. It's ridiculous. Anyway, he opened the store and looked at the list of items that were available at the moment. Looking closer, he noticed that a box known as the post-apocalyptic cultivator box was still there. He decided that he either had to buy it or refresh the store to get rid of it. Seeing that all the boxes would be useful to him, he decided to get all of them when he got back to his fortress. After he was done with that, he looked at his new comrades and figured it was going to be a serious issue to gain their trust. Zhang Kai and the others looked unbothered as they stared out the window, hoping to make sense of everything they had just experienced. In a flashback scene, we see Zhang Kai crying like a wimp and blaming someone who he once treated as a brother. Jiang explained that in his past life, Zhang Kai's entire dorm was killed by zombies because one of his brothers betrayed them. Jiang was the only one who ended up surviving the tragedy. Because of this, Jiang was trying to figure out who the culprit was so that they could deal with the person early on before it was too late. Later on, in an apartment in the city, we see our good old crazy witch talking with someone sweet over the phone and asking the person how things are on their end. It was probably another fool that she had managed to charm with her looks. She asked the person when the supplies they mentioned would be delivered and said she was scared to go to the market because it was so chaotic outside. The person on the phone assured her that he would send it as soon as he was done with what he was doing. Suddenly, she exclaimed when she heard a loud bang on her door. The guy over the phone was worried and asked her what happened. She said there was a crazy knock on her door, and she had to hang up. She looked through the hole and was relieved to see her friend, who was trying to suck on Jiang earlier. Jiang said that she was scared to death because of the frightening knock, but her friend didn't even care to know. She just told the crazy witch that someone known as Old Liu, who lived on the first floor, was taken away that morning. They got inside the room, and Jiang was shocked to hear the news. She asked her friend how that happened, and the girl told her that the police and an ambulance had come to take the person away. With a nervous look on her face, Jiang figured that was why it was so chaotic downstairs earlier in the morning. Her friend was convinced that it was because of the rabid flu, and she was sure that it wasn't just useless rumors anymore. She asked Jiang if Xuxing had delivered the supplies he promised, but I trust that pathetic piece of shit to be completely useless when he's most needed. Jiang's friend told her that these men weren't any good for her. She told her to call Xuxing and let him know that Jiang had a large stockpile of supplies. With how much he had, Jiang was sure to become the next Elon Musk with how much wealth he would acquire. Jiang asked her how she knew about this, and her friend said that she told one of her lackeys to keep an eye on Jiang the last time she got kicked out of his place. She found out that every few days, trucks would come to his fortress to deliver a lot of supplies for him. Jiang looked pissed and assumed that Jiang probably knew about the pandemic in advance. Her friend persuaded her to call Xuxing and seal the deal while they still had time. She also told her to convince the desperate man to give them a bigger size of the cut when he made the money. The car speeds into the fortress, and Jiang along with his friends steps out. Zhang Kai couldn't hide how amazed he was with how large the fortress was. Jiang said that was the usual reaction everyone had when they saw the fortress for the first time. At the same time, Shanshan and Grandpa Lai stepped out to welcome them. Lai was glad that Jiang was finally back, and Shanshan asked if he was okay. Jiang told them not to worry about it because he was alright, and then he proceeded to introduce them to the new members. Zhang Kai and his classmates were then introduced, and Jiang said that they would be their companions from then on. Shanshan happily welcomed them because she felt that they were trustworthy since Jiang had chosen them to be companions. Jiang then told Grandpa Lai to show their new comrades around the area and explain the rules and regulations to them, to which Lai agreed. One of Zhang Kai's friends, the fatso with glasses, felt really nervous and said that the fortress felt like they had come to northern Myanmar. The dude with the white jacket then called for everyone's attention. He asked Jiang to give him and his classmates weapons as well, so that they could contribute to defending the fortress. The audacious request made Jiang very skeptical about whether the guy could be trusted. The guy's classmate then calls him Yiming and tells him not to be so eager to get weapons. They had just gotten there, and they needed to earn Jiang's trust first. Jiang then told them not to be worried because they would get weapons within a few days. Noticing that Jiang was still unconscious, Jiang said that they should have him checked in the medical room first since his injuries were still severe. Zhang Kai and his brothers went inside the building and proceeded to freshen up themselves. Yinaming then asked the fatso, who's known as Fourth, why he stopped him from getting weapons earlier. He said that if he hadn't been stopped, they would have had weapons by now, but Fourth was just confused. Yinaming told him that given their current situation, they were being protected, and at worst, they were practically under house arrest. Fourth wasn't pleased with his words and told him to stop talking like that because, after all, Jiang saved them. Nevertheless, Yinaming still wasn't okay with their condition. He asked Zhang Kai what his background was, to which Zhang Kai replied by reminding them that Jiang said someone hired him to protect them. Yinaming was still displeased. He wanted to know who could have hired Jiang and said that it was possible that Jiang wasn't telling them the truth. To top it off, he told them to look at the way Jiang was being treated. Despite the fact that Jiang's injuries were being monitored in the medical room, Yineming said that the room was more secure than a prison. He felt that Jiang might have been planning to harvest Chang's organs there and told his brothers that they needed to strike first. Fourth tried to reason with him by asking what would happen if they were wrong about Jiang, and if that wouldn't be like betraying their savior. Yineming told him that he would rather betray the world than let the world betray him. If what Jiang told them was true, he planned to take over the fortress and seize control. Yineming was too far gone in his head, and there was no going back for him. He had a sinister look on his face, while he said that besides them and Jiang, the only other people in the fortress were Grandpa Lai and Shanshan. If Jiang happened to be away, he planned to use the opportunity to capture Shanshan and her grandfather. He also said that the girl was cute and suggested that they could have their fun with her. Jiang Kai and Fourth couldn't even believe the words that were coming out of this guy's mouth. They just stood and stared nervously at him and couldn't come up with what to say. Yineming then tried to play off his sinister plans by telling them to relax because he was just playing with them. He told them not to take it seriously, but they would be wise if they did. Jiang Kai was relieved to hear that he was joking and told Yineming not to scare him like that. The apocalypse hadn't even started yet, and he was already thinking about lawless deeds. Fourth also told him that if Jiang really wanted to harvest their organs, he would have locked them up already, especially since he had guns. As Jiang Kai and Fourth left the room, Yineming said to himself that they were not worth plotting with. He said that in chaotic times, one had to be ruthless, and once he succeeded, they would become his lackeys for life. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, Grandpa Lai and Shanshan approached Jiang. Lai told him that Jiang Kai and the other had been settled and Chang was lying in the medical room as well. All the doors and windows were also secured as Jiang had instructed. Jiang thanked the old man, then told him and Shanshan to get some rest because no one knew what could happen the next day. Jiang called back their attention when he suddenly remembered something. Aside from Chang, he told them to keep an eye on the other remaining classmates of Jiang Kai because he felt there was a traitor among them. Shanshan and her granddad looked very worried as they heard that there was a possibility of a traitor close to them. Later that night, Jiang returned to the warehouse and began looking through the system's item shop. He started redeeming the supply boxes one by one, and each of them had an item that would prove to be very useful to him. From lots of food supplies to many rounds of ammunition, the supply boxes made sure Jiang wasn't lacking in any area. Jiang stood in front of the huge mountain of rewards, saying that they were pretty decent. Although it wasn't as good as spending money freely, in the upcoming resource-scarce apocalypse, the rewards were very invaluable. The next day, some flashy cars and trucks pulled up to Jiang's fortress. A man in a suit and the rest of his goons stepped out of the cars with weapons in their hands. The man was talking with someone over the phone and wanted to confirm if he was at the right address. After confirming, he said they would eat together when he got back. As the man orders the goons to break down the door, he's revealed to be the crazy driver from earlier who Jiang had a little road rage fight with. The goons started banging on the gate in an attempt to break it down, but their efforts were completely futile. One of the goons told the man that the gate was probably an inch thick and they wouldn't be able to break it down with the weapons they had. The man was infuriated and asked who would use such a thick door in a normal house. He then ordered his men to bring out the big guns from the cars. They started to slowly unload the crates, which were filled with bottles of Molotov cocktails. The goons ignited the explosives and started throwing them over the gate. Fire rained down and spread throughout every corner of Jiang's fortress. In a matter of seconds, the place was filled with smoke, and the fires were burning uncontrollably. The goons continued to throw the flames into the fortress, setting everything ablaze. Shanshan, along with Jiang Kai and his crew, rushed out to extinguish the fires before everything would be burned to the ground. She said that Jiang was right about everything he had told her. The disaster hadn't fully hit yet, but extreme situations were already happening. At the same time, Jiang and Grandpa Lai stepped out with their guns to take care of the people who were causing trouble. They approached the fortress tower to get a better view of the goons. When they got to the top, Lai told Jiang that one of the guys looked familiar as well as one of the cars. His memories clocked it, and he recognized the man as the crazy driver who had a road rage incident with them earlier. One of the assailants noticed some strange movement in the tower. Then he told their boss that Jiang and the rest had arrived. The crazy driver immediately recognized Jiang and called him a little punk. He ordered Jiang to come down and face him, or he would burn the fortress to the ground. But Jiang told the idiot that he had 5 minutes to get lost with his lackeys or else. The bunch of lackeys got angry at Jiang's words, calling him a little brat and asking him if he knew who their boss was. They were told to stop wasting time and to bring out the other 2 crates of Molotovs, which were remaining. Just then, Jiang suddenly got a new task from the system. The crazy driver and his goons were seen as a threat to the fortress by the system, and it told Jiang to eliminate them as quickly as possible. Grandpa Lai then asked Jiang what their next plan was and if they should fire a warning shot. Jiang thought the idea of warning shots was a joke. He called the guys complete gangsters and said that order hadn't been completely broken down yet, but they were already committing garrison. They couldn't care less if someone actually got burned to death. As he got ready to fire his rifle, he told Lai that leaving the guys alive during the apocalypse would only harm more innocent people and endanger them. After that, he opened fire on them. Before the gangster boss knew what was happening, his arm was shot off cleanly. He then screamed out in pain and held the wound down. Jiang, on the other hand, was upset that he missed his shot, saying that he had gotten rusty after living a peaceful life for so long. Meanwhile, the goons noticed that Jiang's forces had a lot of guns, and they all decided to retreat. The boss tried to get his goons to cover for him as they all ran towards the truck. Jiang got prepared to fire another shot and told himself to finish what he started that day because he hated waiting. He opened fire like a maniac and obliterated some of them before they could escape. The boss and a few lackeys were able to get into the truck, and he hurried the driver to kickstart the engines before it would be too late. Lai was worried that the rest were trying to escape by car, but Jiang told the old man not to worry because that was why he picked the automatic rifle. Jiang reloaded his gun and rained bullets on the jeep that was about to escape. Lai looked at Jiang as he fired the bullets and couldn't believe how proficient the boy was. The way Jiang hip fired and reloaded so smoothly was way better than how he was when he served. This made him wonder about who exactly Jiang was. The sounds of their screams could be heard as the bullets tore through their bodies, but there was no one who could save them. By the time Jiang was done, the front of the fortress was filled with dead bodies, and cars were up in smoke. After the job was done, he told Lai to call Zhang Kai and ask the rest to come out and clean up the mess. Suddenly, a thought popped into his head. Since they were still in the early stages of the disaster, he thought about letting the goons turn into zombies so that he could use them as practice for Zhang Kai and Shanshan. He then turned to Lai and told him that there was no need to rush. The old man asked if they were just going to leave the dead bodies on the road, and Jiang told him that he had other plans for them. Later on, we see 2 cars speeding down through the road. Shuxing was inside, and he asked if they were almost at their destination. Seated at the back were Jing and her friend, who told him that they should arrive at the next intersection. Jing was disappointed in her friend and said that every time Shuxing was around, she would put up an act. She knew what her friend was up to, but decided to play it cool. When they got to the fortress, Shuxing said he would park outside and then told Jing to message him once she got inside. As Jing stepped out, she told Xiaoya to tag along with her. Xiaoya was surprised that she had to follow her friend as well. Jing told her that she was obviously coming and asked how else she would know the factory to go to. Xiaoya told her just to walk straight ahead, and she'll recognize it right away. Her shoes were killing her, and if she walked 2 more blocks, she would be done for. Nevertheless, Jing wasn't listening to her silly excuses. High heels or not, she told Xiaoya that she was coming along as she dragged her out of the car. Xiaoya screamed that her phone was in the bag, but Jing told her to leave it in the car because she already had her own phone with her. As the 2 girls walked, Shuxing looked at them until they got far enough. Then he picked up his phone and told the person on the line to get everyone ready. He told them to follow him as soon as he started his car. The car behind him was filled up with a lot of thugs, waiting for the right moment to give Jiang hell. Their leader confirmed Shuxing's orders and waited for the signal. Meanwhile, Xiaoya asked Jing why she dragged her into this. Jing told her that she was an old fox and asked if she really thought that she would fall for her silly tricks. Xiaoya tried to play innocent by saying that Jing got it all wrong. She got all dressed up to make sure that she could hook Jiang since he already knew about Jing and Shuxing. Jing noticed something off and got nervous as she asked what was going on up ahead. As they got closer, they saw the dead bodies and wrecked cars in front of the fortress. Zioya wondered if a shootout happened there or something crazier. The girls got scared when they noticed that the bodies were dead. Zioya suggested that they go back, but Jing was still analyzing the scene. She said that, judging by the blood, the guys had been dead for a while. Then she wondered if two groups were fighting over Jiang's supplies. She thought that Jiang didn't make it out alive, but his death didn't matter to her. All she wanted were the supplies, and she wondered if they were still there. Unknown to the girls, the trunk of the car behind them opened up, and that crazy driver was slowly crawling out. They decided to head back and let Shuxing's people handle the situation, but they were completely clueless about the guy who was slowly mutating into a zombie. Jing and Zioya walked up to the huge gates of the fortress and thought about how they would get in. They were really nervous because of how exposed they were in the open. Zioya said that they couldn't see anything inside because of how tightly the gate was shut. Seeing how reinforced and tight the security was, Jing wondered if Jiang was okay. While they were still fiddling with the gate, a voice called out to them, and they panicked. Looking up, they saw Shanshan with her crossbow, and she asked them who they were and how they knew about the fortress. Zioya said that they were friends with Jiang, and Jing told her that she was Jiang's girlfriend. Quite the audacious statement. Shanshan didn't trust the two girls, so she called out to Jiang and told him that there were two witches outside his gate. She also told him that one of them claimed to be his girlfriend, which she highly doubted. Jing was pissed off and felt that Jiang suddenly changed his attitude because he found a new girlfriend, whom she thought was Shanshan. Zioya told her to calm down and not to show any displeasure because they still had important matters to handle. She asked if Lai Shuxing would be able to handle the ambush, considering that Shanshan had a crossbow in her hands. Jing told her friend that Lai Shuxing would be able to handle it because he brought a few pistols. She was confident that he would be able to take down Jiang once the gates were open. But her expression showed that she was very angry that Jiang had another girl that he was taking care of. Jiang finally came out and questioned the girls from the top of the tower. He called them by their names and asked what they were doing at his fortress. He was obviously disgusted at their presence. Jiang quickly activated the Eye of Insight ability to check if they were really friends or foes. Zioya said that they were friends and asked if it was a bad thing to come check up on him. She tried her best to play the role of an innocent girl, saying that things were very chaotic at the time and they were worried about him. Zioya then asked Jiang if he didn't care about them anymore. Despite her attempts to act friendly, Jiang's ability already showed him that they were definitely planning to harm him. Without a moment's hesitation, he called their bluff and laughed at the idea of them being worried about him. He already suspected that Lai Shuxing was probably nearby already, and he asked the girls how many people he brought and what weapons they had. Zioya and Jing were completely speechless. They couldn't even defend themselves, and they wondered how he already knew about their plans. Before the girls could think up the words to say, Jiang fired at them with his gun, and he made it obvious that he fired a warning shot. They thought he had gone completely insane for actually shooting at them. The two girls couldn't fathom why Jiang had become so hostile towards them. Zioya tried to get Jing to speak calmly because Jiang was still the one pointing a gun at them. Jing, being an idiot, asked what there was to be afraid of. She wanted to know if Jiang would actually shoot her dead. Jiang laughed at them and said that it would be too easy to shoot them dead. Left to him, there were more treacherous things that could have been done to those girls. Their situation only got worse when they turned back because they started hearing strange noises. From the truck behind them, the mutant zombies had started slowly approaching them. Jing questioned if they were rabid flu patients. The zombies had their eyes fixed on the girls, and it was only a matter of time before they became repulsive creatures like them. Zioya wondered if the rabid flu was able to bring dead people back to life. Jiang looked at the horrible situation they were in and said that he would let the girls die at the hands of the zombies. The mindless zombies roared furiously and rushed towards the poor girls. As they dove to tackle Zioya and Jing, the girls were able to escape and started running for their lives. The girls ran as fast as they could back to Lai Shuxing's car. They yelled his name as they got closer to the car, and he wound down the windows to figure out what was going on. Tears and sweat dripped down from their faces as the zombies got closer to them. Jing yelled for Lai Shuxing to come to save her, but it was looking like it was the end of the road for them. They weren't expecting the tables to turn on them so drastically. Lai Shuxing panicked as he saw how terrible the situation was. He asked how it was possible for the rabid flu patients to have been outside the fortress at that moment. He spoke to his goons over the walkie-talkie and yelled to them that she turn around as quickly as possible. He needed to move quickly before the infection would get into his body and mutate him into one of them. The cars quickly swerved around and fled the scene. Jing cursed out Lai Shuxing for abandoning her and Xiaoya to the treacherous claws of the monsters. The distance between the girls and the vehicles was far greater than the distance between them and the zombies. There was no hope for them, and the situation called for desperate measures to be taken. Just when it looked like the curtains had closed on them, Jing said that she didn't want to die as she raised her handbag. She tossed it towards Xiaoya's legs, and the poor girl's legs got entangled in the handle. You really can't trust anyone during an apocalypse. Xiaoya lost her balance and fell face flat on the ground. She screamed out in pain as her face hit the cold, rough road. That was how Xiaoya's life flashed before her eyes. She became an easy target for the vile creatures, and they quickly piled on her before she could get up. Her eyes were filled with fear, and her heart beat so fast that it could have probably broken through her rib cage at that moment. She told the zombies to wait, but she forgot that she wasn't talking to people who could be reasoned with. Her blood was spilled, and sounds of bones being crunched could be heard as the zombies feasted on her. Her vision quickly turned red, and all she saw were mindless creatures eating her up like a McDonald's Happy Meal. In her last moments of consciousness, she looked toward Jing with boiling rage and rained curses on the girl for setting her up like that. She called Jing all kinds of names, but it did little to help her already sealed fate. Choking on her blood, Xiaoya swore that Jing would never die a good death. No matter how long it would take, the crazy witch would definitely get what she deserved. Jing chose to ignore all the words hurled at her as she fled the scene. You could see the cold sweat dripping from her face and the deranged look she had. Jing told herself that Xiaoya deserved every single thing that was happening to her at that moment. She kept repeating the words to herself in order to feel better about the atrocity she had just committed. Meanwhile, Jiang and Shanshan watched the gory scene from the top of their tower. While Jiang was unfazed by what he was looking at, Shanshan was deeply disturbed, and she couldn't believe her eyes. The system then awarded Jiang 10 points for taking care of the threats that befell his fortress. With that done, it quickly gave him a new task, which was to clear the area of the infected monsters who were lurking around his base. Shanshan then turned her attention to Jiang and was shocked that all those people had mutated into zombies just like that. The thought of it caused her mind to become very troubled, and she wondered what the future would look like if this was just the beginning of the apocalypse. Jiang remained very calm and told her that the apocalypse had officially begun, with a large amount of alien infection sources in the air. The dead who were exposed outside would quickly mutate into zombies, but it didn't just stop there. Anyone who was injured and those with weak constitutions among the living were also at a high risk of getting infected. Shanshan found it hard to grasp all the information Jiang was giving her, but she eventually understood that things were like that for them. After that, Jiang told her to call everyone together for a meeting. She looked at him and was baffled at how someone could remain so calm in such trying times. Moments later, everyone in the fortress gathered in a room. Shanshan locked the door, while others sat down and waited for what Jiang had to say. Yinming, who was obviously still very hostile, refused to sit and decided to stand while the meeting went on. Jiang then told them that they had to remain indoors for the next 2 days, except it was absolutely necessary for them to step out. He said that they had to keep the doors and windows tightly shut in order to let their bodies gradually adapt to the infection source. From his words, it seems the body is able to fight it when it's introduced slowly as opposed to when the virus takes the body by full force. Anyway, Jiang said that it would greatly reduce the risk of them getting mutated if they adhered strictly to the rules he stated. Zhang Kai, on the other hand, was very worried about his friend, Chong. From the expression on his face, it didn't look like Chong's condition was getting any better. Later that night, in the infirmary, we see Chong lying on the bed, and he looks to be in a lot of pain. Part of his face and body were slowly turning purple. This was a sign that the mutation was slowly taking over his body, and if push came to shove, they might have to send the poor guy to his maker. It had spread all the way to his arms, and the veins were really bulging out. Cold sweat ran down his forehead as he gritted his teeth and tried to fight the pain, but only time would be able to tell what fate had in store for him. A chaotic scene in front of a tall skyscraper with dark smoke swirling around its facade. People in business attire are seen panicking and running away from the building, suggesting an emergency or disaster situation, as one man shouts in distress while others flee towards a yellow taxi. Shang's a worried expression looking out of a window, shouting, "It's complete chaos out there." He's observing a tumultuous or dangerous situation unfolding outside. In a tense moment, Shang's urgently tells a woman and child, "We have to go to the warehouse tonight and bring back the remaining supplies," he instructs. "Zio Lai, you and Shuai stay at home. No matter what, don't open the door for anyone except me, understand?" This suggests an urgent and possibly dangerous situation, emphasizing the need for caution and safety. Shang's looking determined and tense, is preparing to leave while the woman holds the child protectively. Shen posture and expression convey urgency. Suddenly, someone knocking on the door. Shang's face displaying a serious and tense expression as he looks towards the door. A tense moment where Shang's, with a serious expression and a finger raised to his lips, signals for silence. The woman looks anxious while holding the child close, who covers his mouth, reflecting a situation that requires them to remain quiet and alert, likely due to an imminent threat or danger. Shang's cautiously opening a door while holding a golf club, indicating he is prepared for a potential threat. Someone calls out, "Brother Ji, are you home?" suggesting he is looking for someone. Shang's exhaling in relief, saying, "Ong Tao, it's you," while still holding the golf club. His expression suggests that he was initially tense and ready for confrontation, but recognizing Yong Tao has eased his worries, indicating he found the person he was searching for and no immediate danger is present. Shang's hand, gripping a door handle, opened the door. Suddenly, Shang's is being kicked in the chest, causing him to fall backward with a pained expression. In shock and anger, he shouts, "What the hell?" Shang's being restrained and attacked by a group of individuals. He is on the ground, struggling against multiple assailants as more people rush towards him, emphasizing a coordinated assault. Shang's pinned down forcefully by one of attackers. He struggles against their grip. Yang's dressed in suits loom over him with stern expressions, emphasizing their control and dominance in the situation. Shang's in a state of shock and betrayal as he yells, "Yong Tao, what the hell are you doing? I treated you so well." His expression shows disbelief and hurt, emphasizing the emotional impact of being betrayed by someone he trusted. Yong Tao responding with a mocking smile, saying, "Say that again, treated me well in your eyes? I'm just a lackey." His defiant posture and words reveal his resentment and bitterness, as Shang says, "Do you have any conscience? Without me, would you have been able to save up for your house down payment?" Yong Tao, standing confidently and expressing his indignation, saying, "Yes, he made a bit for the down payment, but you earned enough for several houses." He demands his warehouse keys and the address. Shang's still on the ground, showing his focus on retrieving something important. Shang's lying on the ground, gritting his teeth in frustration and anger. Yong Tao with a smug expression, saying, "Still being stubborn," as he looks back, indicating his confidence in having the upper hand. In the background, the woman clings protectively to the child, both appearing worried and vulnerable, emphasizing the tension. Yong Tao aggressively grabbing the woman by her hair, forcing her to look up as he commands, "Look over here, you bastard!" The woman in pain, while the child watches in shock and fear, highlighting the intense and violent nature of the confrontation. The child, filled with fear and anger, shouting, "Please let go of my mommy," as he reaches out in a desperate attempt to protect his mother. His face is flushed, and tears well up in his eyes, reflecting his emotional distress. Child biting Yang Tao's arm in a desperate act of defiance, tears in his eyes as he tries to protect his mother. Yang Tao reacts angrily, shouting, "You little brat. You've gone crazy, haven't you?" Child is forcefully thrown back by Yang Tao. The child cries out in pain as he is pushed away, while the mother watches in horror, her expression filled with shock and fear. Shang's on the ground, glaring defiantly at Yang Tao with determination and anger. He shouts at her, "Bastard, if you've got guts, come at me. Leave my wife and child alone." Yang Tao standing confidently with a smirk, arms crossed, as he says, "Don't worry, as long as you cooperate, your wife and child will be safe." While Shang's, visibly angry and desperate, is on the ground behind him. Yang Tao's command, "Now, take us to your warehouse." Meanwhile, Yang Tao and his group standing confidently in the doorway, silhouetted by the light outside. They strike imposing poses, with Yang Tao at the center, exuding a sense of dominance and control as they survey the area. Yang Tao inspecting a few remaining boxes and questioning, this is all that's left. Shang's beside him, facing away, responds defensively, "Weren't you the one who found those big clients? Everything's been sold off. Even the near expiry and expired food is almost gone." Yang Tao face, deep in thought, as he touches his chin with a contemplative expression. Yang Tao with a cunning and ambitious expression, reflecting a bold and unscrupulous plan to capitalize on Zhang Xiaoyang's resources. Shang's advised to stay away from him. When he was delivering goods, he accidentally saw that he was carrying a gun. His serious expression and furrowed brow indicate the danger he perceives, while the person beside him listens attentively. He continues, "That guy must have somehow gotten wind of this disaster ahead of time." Yang Tao dismissively addressing the man, that's his problem to deal with. His posture is confident and uncaring, with arms crossed and a smug expression, indicating that he has no intention of getting involved in the complications or risks mentioned. Yang Tao looking down with a cold expression, while Shang's behind him reacts with surprise, saying, "What do you mean?" Yang Tao responds with a manipulative offer, "Take Zhang Xiaoyang's supplies, and in return, your wife and child will be safe." It's a fair trade, don't you think? His proposal places the Shangs in a difficult position. Shangs with a tense and conflicted expression, his brows furrowed and his mouth set in a grim line. His eyes convey a mixture of anger, frustration. In Zhang Fortress wide view of a large industrial complex or facility situated on a hillside. A tense confrontation, Jiang with his group, Jen Kai's facing someone off screen. Their expressions range from stern to determined, suggesting they are confronting a challenge or standing up against a threat. His friend in the foreground, seen from behind, appears to be seated, and the aggressive voice. His friend in a state of extreme distress or anger, shouting at her, as he appears to be strapped or restrained in a chair. His body is tense, with veins bulging and his mouth wide open in a fierce expression, suggesting he is either in pain or vehemently resisting. The fatso in the foreground looking tense and serious, crying. Behind him, one person appears worried while another shields his face, indicating discomfort or distress at the noise. Jen Kai friend with a serious and determined expression, sweat dripping down his face as he commands to kill him. His intense gaze and the cold, resolute tone of his words suggest a pivotal moment where he is making a grave decision. Zhang with a serious expression, looking off to the side in the background, the other man watching him closely. Jen Kai looking surprised and slightly angry, asks, "What did he says?" His expression suggests disbelief or shock at something just said. Beside him, Fatso with glasses adding to the tension in the scene. His friend states with a serious expression, "He's already dead. If you don't finish him off now, and he somehow breaks free, everyone's life will be in danger then." His tone is pragmatic but cold, reflecting his focus on the perceived threat. In contrast, the Fatso passionately argues, "He's our brother. You're giving up on him without even trying." His reaction underscores the emotional conflict. Zhang calmly states, "He's right. Once someone turns, there's almost no chance of recovery," referring to the restrained individual in the bad, who is visibly in distress or transformation. The Fatso looking troubled, with hesitation. Zhang gripping the hilt of a sheathed knife, poised and ready to draw it. The confident grip and the slight shine on the blade suggest imminent action. Zhang handing a knife to another individual, instructing him with a calm but firm, "Use this." The recipient, taken aback, responds nervously, "What do you mean?" His wide-eyed expression and hesitant posture indicate his shock and reluctance. Zhang with a calm yet serious expression as he commands, "Finish him off." His gaze is steady, showing no hesitation, indicating his resolve in making a difficult decision. In the background, the restrained individual is seen in distress, further intensifying the gravity of the situation. The young man with a conflicted and tense expression, holding a knife close as he hesitates to act. Sweat drips down his face, and his mouth is set in a grimace, reflecting his internal struggle and fear. Jiang speaking sternly to his companion, saying, "You've always wanted a weapon, haven't you? Now, take this weapon and put him out of his misery." His intense gaze and commanding tone emphasize his insistence, as he pushes the man to take decisive action. The young man being addressed looks uncertain and distressed, with a bead of sweat on his face, highlighting his hesitation and internal conflict. Jiang gives knife to the man, one hand extending the weapon to the other with urgency and force. Zhen Kai holding a sword at its hilt. Zhen Kai looks serious and determined, while the others, on either side, appear conflicted and anxious. Zhen Kai gripping the knife tightly, his expression resolute as he declares, "I'll do it." His determined look and firm stance indicate that he has made up his mind, ready to take on the difficult task at hand. Zhen Kai tense and uneasy as he holds a knife, his expression filled with anxiety and uncertainty. Sweat drips down his face, indicating the pressure of the moment, while he hesitantly receives the knife from Jiang. Jiang, holding a knife, questions Zhen Kai intensely, asking if they've truly considered their actions. He hints at the possibility that everything he previously said might have been deceitful, and warns that taking this step could lead them to be seen as a murderer. He tests Zhen Kai's resolve in this critical moment. Zhen Kai speaks with determination, expressing his trust in brother Jiang. Behind his friend looks on with a mix of concern and unease, reflecting the high stakes and uncertainty surrounding their decision. Jiang stands with a confident, smug expression, responding with a casual, "Oh!" behind him. Person appears to be in distress, lying in a hospital bed with a pained expression. Zhen Kai stands over his friend who is lying in bed, visibly distressed. Zhen Kai grips a knife tightly, his expression filled with determination, while the man in the bed reacts in fear, screaming as the situation escalates. Zhen Kai, filled with rage, raises a knife high above his head, ready to strike. His expression is fierce and determined, teeth clenched, showing his intense emotions in the moment. The other man, in a state of panic and fear, looks up in terror, eyes wide and sweating. The man on the bed screams in terror, mouth wide open and eyes filled with fear, as the knife stops suddenly, just inches away from him. Zhen Kai with the knife is restrained by Jiang, preventing the attack. The tension is palpable as the aggressor struggles, while Jiang, intervening, remains calm and composed, firmly holding his wrist to stop the violent act. The individual on the bed looks up, still gripped by fear but also relief, as the confrontation is momentarily diffused by the intervention. Zhen Kai nervously addresses brother Jiang, likely seeking his attention, while Xiaoyang appears calm and observant, displaying a stark contrast in their reactions to the situation at hand. Jiang dismisses the others, indicating that he still has plans for someone whose situation he deems unique. His command reflects authority and control. A system prompt alerts that a rare variant has been discovered. A sudden bang echoes through the hallway as the doors to the medical room slam shut. In a tense confrontation, Jiang stands over an enraged individual strapped to a bed, who growls in defiance. The man, visibly furious and restrained, grits his teeth as Xiaoyang calmly addresses him by name, Chen Chong. Jiang leans in closely, asserting his authority over the restrained Chen Chong as he assigns him an important task, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. Chen Chong's pained expression reflects his inner turmoil. A sleek black car screeches as it makes a sharp turn on a rooftop, indicating a high-speed chase or a critical escape maneuver. The black car crashes into a pole with a loud impact, causing visible damage and abrupt skid marks on the road. Shangs emerges from the damaged car, visibly frustrated and rubbing his head, cursing his misfortune after the crash. His exasperated expression and the smoke billowing from the vehicle indicate the severity of the situation. As the zombie gazes into the distance, he reassures himself that help or something crucial is on the way, easing his earlier frustration. The man finds himself in a sudden confrontation with a zombie that roars ferociously, lunging at him with unrestrained aggression. In the heat of the clash, the man struggles to fend off the creature's relentless assault, managing to push it away just in time, sending it crashing to the ground. The man sprints toward his vehicle with the zombie pursuit, determined to reach a weapon or tool inside. He grabs a metal rod from the car, his urgency and desperation clear as he prepares to defend himself. In a fierce act of retaliation, he swings the rod with full force, striking the creature brutally and venting his anger in a violent clash. The man stands over the fallen zombie amidst the debris, panting heavily after the fierce battle, the wrecked car smoking behind him. With exhaustion evident on his face, he grips the rod tightly, receiving a warning from an onlooker to leave quickly, prompting him to hastily retreat from the scene under the bright blue sky, still reeling from the intense confrontation. A vehicle pulls up near a building as a group of individuals prepares for their next move. Jiang steps through a squeaky door onto the rooftop, signaling the beginning of a planned operation. He is accompanied by a determined team, each armed and ready, reflecting their resolve and unity in facing the challenges ahead. Shanshan expresses her discomfort with the gear, addressing Jiang and questioning the necessity of their protective equipment. Jiang, maintaining his composed demeanor, stresses the dangers posed by zombies, explaining that their unpredictable strength makes the gear essential, especially for those with less combat experience. As the group huddles together behind a building, strategizing their next move, Jiang leads them with caution and determination, emphasizing their need to stay alert. Jiang signals his team to prepare, warning them that they are now within the perception range of the zombies, and readiness is crucial. As a zombie detects their presence, its vicious appearance and ferocious movements signal an imminent attack. Jiang shouts reminders to his team, urging them to maintain distance and watch out for one another as they brace for a fierce confrontation against the relentless zombie threat. A zombie pounces aggressively toward Jiang, but he narrowly evades the attack, keeping his focus sharp. Jiang quickly instructs his team, emphasizing that the moment a zombie misses is their best opportunity to strike, targeting the temple and the back of the neck for maximum effectiveness. One of the team members, driven by Jiang's guidance, steps up with determination, ready to deliver a decisive blow as he shouts his attack command. A powerful blow lands on the zombie's head, sending shockwaves of impact, but causing the creature to react violently, showing its resilience. The attacker yells in pain, realizing that striking the hardest part of the skull was a mistake, as Xiaoyang critiques from a distance, highlighting the error as a lesson for the group. As the zombie roars back, it aggressively counters, grabbing and pushing the attacker, demonstrating the peril of misjudging these relentless foes. In a desperate cry for help, the team member calls out for Jen Kai as the zombie closes in with menacing intent. Jiang acknowledges a correct defensive move, urging Jen Kai to step in as teammates rally to assist. With precise timing, Jen Kai swings a bat, delivering a powerful strike to the zombie, turning the tide of the battle in their favor. The zombie takes a powerful hit to the head from the bat, staggering but still standing, showcasing its resilience. Jiang, watching the group's effort, urges them to keep attacking, emphasizing that one hit won't be enough to take the zombie down completely. One of the team members, filled with adrenaline, turns to Xiaoyang with a proud yet anxious expression, asking how they performed, eager for feedback on their teamwork and combat skills. Jiang smirks confidently, unfazed by the approaching zombie as he casually dismisses the danger with a nonchalant attitude. Jen Kai urgently shouts a warning for Jiang to be careful, clearly alarmed by the zombie's rapid advance. The zombie lunges with a fierce snarl, closing in dangerously close, its gaping maw aimed directly at Jiang. Jiang grabs the zombie by the head with a firm grip, halting its attack effortlessly and displaying his superior strength and composure. He admonishes the zombie as if it were capable of understanding, reminding it of the crucial lesson to always be aware of one's surroundings, turning the tables with a sharp command. The rest of the team looks on in stunned silence, clearly impressed and taken aback by Jiang's cool and commanding control over the situation. Shangs approaches a large reflective surface, scanning his surroundings with a cautious expression as he notices vagrants roaming nearby. Frustrated by the unexpected presence, he questions whether Jiang would have alerted them or confessed something important. Meanwhile, a rugged vehicle pulls up with urgency, and a commanding voice resonates, urging everyone to stay vigilant and support their comrades, signaling a rallying call to action. Jiang arrives to the vehicle, A voice confirms that it's Jiang, causing a stir among the scattered group below. Shang peers out from the back of the vehicle, astonished to learn that Jiang and his gang are actively hunting down someone referred to as the Madman. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes emerges from beneath the vehicle. Kaijing crawls desperately on the ground, reaching out with determination despite the severe injuries, eyes filled with fear and urgency. The hand grasps tightly onto the leg of a bystander, startling him and causing a sudden reaction. The man stumbles backward in shock, yelling out in surprise as he falls, the grip of the injured person still firm, intensity of their plea for help or escape. The man's face contorts in a mix of fear and shock as he realizes the threat before him, his expression filled with dread. Suddenly, the Kaijing rises with an unearthly roar, her eyes wide and furious as she lunges toward him, embodying a terrifying transformation that catches him completely off guard. Shang is brutally attacked, his face contorted in shock and pain as he screams out in horror. Blood spurts from Kaijing's body as the force of the strike overwhelms him, leaving him helpless and panicked, unable to defend himself against the onslaught. Jiang, holding a smoking gun, stands over a lifeless body while the survivor, drenched in blood, struggles to catch his breath. Desperation fills his face as he looks at the carnage around him. Jiang holds his rifle firmly, his expression serious as he confronts the situation before him. Shang stumbles toward him, overwhelmed with relief, calling out to his older brother, grateful to have finally found him alive amidst the chaos. Shang's eyes widen as he notices something unusual, his attention drawn to the blood-stained arm of the man before him. The infected wound becomes more visible, causing a moment of tension as the situation grows more dire. Jiang coldly informs Shang that he has been bitten, raising his weapon to confront him. In a panic, the man begs for mercy, pleading with Jiang not to shoot as he tries to reason with him, but Jiang remains firm, warning him not to come any closer. Shang is filled with despair and admits that he knows he's beyond saving and will soon turn into one of the crazed infected. However, with tears of anger and desperation, he reveals that Yang Jing has taken his family hostage, using them as leverage to manipulate him, in a plot to steal Zhang's resources. With determination, the man pleads his innocence, insisting he has never committed any heinous acts and that his family is blameless. He begs Jiang to protect them from the cruel fate that awaits, leveraging the loyalty they've built and the resources he's accumulated as his final desperate attempt for mercy. Jiang reflects silently, acknowledging that while Shang's initial motives may have been selfish, there's no denying that his actions had helped Jiang in the past. With a determined expression, he contemplates his next move, fully aware of the weight of the situation before him. His group of survivors, led by a determined Jiang, gathers with weapons in hand, ready to take on the next challenge. Jiang smirks, realizing that the added incentive of rewards for completing tasks has only strengthened his resolve to move forward. Jiang smiles confidently as he reviews the newly assigned tasks from the system, his determination growing with the promise of rewards. His mission is clear: to rescue his wife and eliminate any infected lurking outside the base, with every success adding to his reward points. Shang, battered and covered in blood, reassures Jiang that he will handle matters concerning his family, standing strong despite his injuries. In an emotional display, he falls to the ground, declaring his undying loyalty, swearing to repay his debt even if it means serving in another life. The man kneels before Jiang, urging him to take action, his desperation evident. He hesitates, but Shang pleads for him to end it, not wanting to become a threat to his family in the future. Jiang, holding a gun and deep in thought, remains silent as he weighs his decision. Shannon, nearby, orders someone to fetch a bicycle for him, signaling a change in the situation as the older man looks on from behind. Jiang, with firm resolve, instructs Shang to leave and go somewhere far from the crowds, as time is running out. Shang, realizing the gravity of the situation, expresses his gratitude with a solemn smile, thanking the younger man for his final act of kindness. He speeds away on a bicycle, racing against time as the desolate streets blur behind him. With fierce determination, he calls out for his wife and child, pushing himself to the limit in his final act of desperation. Shang, now overwhelmed with emotion and tears, presses forward despite the pain and fear as his eyes glow with determination. Meanwhile, Jiang stands in front of a group of defeated enemies, his rifle slung over his back, commanding respect and authority from those around him. A petrol bomb smashes down with tremendous force, taking out another enemy in a brutal display. At the same time, a lighter ignites, signaling the start of something dangerous and possibly destructive. A massive fire erupts as the group of survivors stands in silence, watching the destruction unfold before them. The leader coolly evaluates their progress, reminding them that with their current skills and teamwork, future challenges should be manageable. Shannon, with sharp eyes and determination, expresses her concern about facing larger hordes, noting that their current abilities might not be enough. The group listens in silence, with the weight of her words causing them to reflect on the looming dangers ahead. Jiang, resolute, commands the group to follow him as he strides ahead with purpose. The group approaches a large, imposing door, preparing for whatever awaits them on the other side, with the tension in the air thickening as they get closer. Jiang acknowledges a man named Shenbo and informs him about the warehouse. Handing over the key, he entrusts the safety of their weapons to Shenbo, knowing he'll protect the armory while the leader heads into the city for a mission. Shenbo expresses concern about the chaos in the city, questioning whether it's wise for Jiang to venture out alone. However, Jen Kai enthusiastically volunteers to accompany him, rallying the others to join the mission. Jiang insists that his companions stay behind, as they are not yet ready to face the dangers ahead, entrusting Shenbo with the responsibility of their safety. As he drives off, determined and focused, his weapons rest beside him, ready for the challenges awaiting him in the city. The system display shows empty options, frustrating the young leader as he notices that the marketplace hasn't been updated with anything useful. Annoyed, he contemplates spending points to refresh the system, hoping for better supplies for the mission ahead. With no other choice, Jiang presses the refresh button, knowing the difficulty of the upcoming mission. After spending his points, the system reveals several supply crates that might give him the edge he needs to succeed. He notices that the cost of manual refresh has increased, making him realize he'll need to be more cautious with his points. Satisfied with the rare item he obtained from the refresh, he contemplates the value of his decision as he prepares for the challenges ahead. The system confirms the successful exchange of points for the black tech supply crate, reducing his score significantly. Jiang speeds off in his car. The streets are quiet, but the tension lingers in the air as he drives toward his destination. The black tech crate reveals a powerful energy-enhancing serum, boosting the leader's physical strength. With a smirk, he consumes the serum, feeling its effects immediately as a bright surge of power courses through his body. Jiang is surprised by the strength of the +5 energy serum, realizing its significant impact. Without hesitation, he injects the serum into his arm, immediately feeling its powerful effects surging through his body. He feels an intense surge of power, clenching his fists as his body is pushed to its limits. The system displays his new stats, showing his attributes boosted to an extraordinary level, far beyond that of an ordinary person. The scene shifts to a tall residential building, identified as the home of Shang. A mother comforts her scared child, reassuring him that his father will handle everything and keep them safe. Meanwhile, two menacing figures burst into the room, their serious expressions signaling trouble as they confront the family. The mother, alarmed, demands to know what the intruders plan to do. One of the men cruelly grabs her, mocking her fear and implying that they're there to cause serious harm. The mother struggles against the intruders, pleading for them to stop as they begin to assault her, terror filling her face. Despite her resistance, the men continue their attack, leaving her defenseless. A woman is forcefully grabbed by two men, her cries for help ringing out as she struggles to break free. Behind, a young boy watches in fear, unable to intervene in the escalating confrontation. A figure steps into the room, towering over the scene as one man is thrown to the ground. A confident man enters the scene, his expression stern as he questions the chaos unfolding before him. His calm but commanding presence immediately shifts the atmosphere, as if he holds control over the situation. The man with a stern expression is approached by an accomplice, who calls him over with a sly grin, seemingly unfazed by the situation. Despite the apparent lightheartedness, there's an underlying tension as they exchange words about how to handle the woman. The man smirks, his expression showing confidence as he dismisses the situation, hinting that this isn't the first time he's dealt with such matters. The man with the ponytail expresses frustration, warning his accomplices about the potential consequences if things go wrong with the woman. He asserts his authority, making it clear that they need to handle the situation carefully if they want to avoid drawing unwanted attention. The man grins with a confident smirk, taunting his targets as if he's toying with them, showing no fear of the situation. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the woman clutches the young boy tightly, both trembling in fear as they brace for whatever danger might come next. Under the eerie glow of the crescent moon, chaos unfolds in the city streets as shadowy figures scramble in panic, surrounded by wrecked vehicles. Jiang calmly grips the steering wheel, his enhanced abilities sharpening his focus and reaction time. With double the physical capacity of an average person, he's fully in control, prepared for whatever lies ahead on the road. Jiang speeds through a crowded highway, effortlessly dodging cars as flames trail behind, leaving chaos in his wake. Moments later, under the ominous night sky, the city is in disarray, with zombies scattered across the road, unsure of what just tore through the streets. He's stepping out of the car as its headlights illuminate the deserted road ahead. With the city just beyond, he realizes it's time to leave the car behind and continue the mission on foot, his gaze sharp and determined under the moonlight. Jiang senses something off, his eyes narrowing as he scans the darkened forest around him. Suddenly, a zombie charges at him, screaming wildly with terrifying speed, catching him off guard. Jiang swiftly dodges the attacker's strike, countering with a precise and forceful movement. His fist connects solidly with the opponent, showing his superior strength and skill in a swift, decisive blow. With explosive speed, Jiang delivers a powerful blow to his opponent, catching them off guard and sending them flying back. The force of the attack leaves the enemy reeling, as the protagonist prepares to strike again, showing no signs of slowing down. Jiang calmly extends his hand, digital energy materializing into a weapon, its sharp edge glowing with power. As the enemies approach, he stands unfazed, gripping the newly formed sword, ready to face them head-on under the ominous night sky. Jiang dashes forward with lightning speed, his eyes locked on his target as he closes the distance in an instant. With a swift and powerful strike, his blade clashes in the darkness, leaving his enemies defeated under the moonlit sky, marking the end of the confrontation. Jiang stands over his fallen foe, reflecting on his superior strength and reflexes, knowing that his enhanced physical abilities have given him the edge. Sensing danger, his heightened awareness kicks in, alerting him to a new threat surrounding them as a tense realization spreads. Jiang gazes into the distance, calculating the distance ahead as the city looms under the night sky, determined to continue his path. Suddenly, a system notification appears, alerting him to an unexpected mission that has been triggered, surrounded by cautionary markers. Zombies find themselves surrounded, panic setting in as they desperately try to defend against the incoming threat. Inside the store, quick orders are given to barricade the entrances, with others scrambling to bring heavy objects to fortify their defenses. A young boy, desperate and terrified, cries out to his father, fearing that they won't make it out alive. His father, trying to maintain his composure, reassures him with bravado, but the tension in his voice reveals the fear they both share, as tears stream down the boy's face. The tension rises as one man sarcastically complains about the chaos, while the officer, gripping his gun, nervously wonders if this could be the end for them. With sweat beading down his face, he contemplates the gravity of their situation, realizing just how dire things have become. The silhouette of figures outside the window hints at the looming danger as the noise of breaking glass fills the room. Instinctively, the group reacts, readying themselves for the incoming threat, as one of them nervously questions the sudden commotion. The glass shatters violently as a figure crashes through the window, debris flying everywhere in a chaotic explosion of force. Panic sets in as one man screams in shock, while another stands frozen, horrified by the sudden intrusion. Blood splatters against the walls as the figure collapses, leaving a dark and unsettling scene in its wake. The room falls eerily silent, with the shattered window and bloodstains serving as grim reminders of the chaos that just unfolded. The officer, sweating and breathing heavily, gives orders to move heavy objects to reinforce their position, clearly feeling the pressure of the situation. As the group quietly complies, tension builds, and they brace for whatever is coming, trying to avoid making any noise that could give them away. Outside, shadowy figures gather around the fallen bodies, the eerie silence only broken by the faint sound of their movements. Inside the group, tense and ready for a fight, stares in disbelief at the horrific scene, questioning who could have caused such devastation. One of them shouts in panic, convinced that they are dealing with a mutant, his fear clearly escalating. Confused, the other person asks what a mutant is, and the first explains that it's an enhanced version of a zombie, stronger and more agile, just like in comics, novels, and games. A police officer, clearly frustrated, criticizes the younger man for always indulging in comics, novels, and games, blaming them for his poor performance. His partner, exasperated by the comment, calls out his lack of tact and urges him to focus on carefully observing their surroundings to avoid being caught off guard by the mutant. The group cautiously moves forward, each person scanning their surroundings as they slowly gather at a designated point. Suddenly, one of the officers signals for everyone to stop, bringing the group to a halt as tension fills the air. Jiang receives a system notification, confirming that his mission is complete, with additional points earned for his actions. Meanwhile, a frantic voice exclaims that the entity they encountered must have been a mutant, filled with fear and disbelief. One man observes Jiang from a distance, commenting that he appears to be a survivor. Jiang, with a smirk, dismisses the notion of mutants, confidently stating that it's not yet time for them to overrun the streets. One of the men exclaims, confirming that Jiang is indeed a survivor. The officer, urging him to join their group, warns that it's far too dangerous to be wandering around alone in such uncertain times. Jiang questions the group's numbers, curious if they are the only ones left. The officer explains that they are out searching for supplies and that a large number of civilians have gathered at a place called Jiang Garden, which isn't far from their current location. The officer, confident in his group's abilities, invites the protagonist to join them, assuring him that with their numbers and experience they can protect him from the dangers ahead. The Jiang smiles warmly, thanking them for the offer, though his expression hints at something deeper. Three people stand in the middle of a street at night, surrounded by a faint glow. Their serious expressions suggest they are preparing for something important or dangerous. A man with a stern expression asks Jiang in the hoodie about an important meeting. Jiang responds simply with yes. The man with a stern expression turns back, asking if Jiang they're talking about is a relative or a girlfriend, implying that their relationship with the missing person might be important. The man confronts Jiang, reminding him that this is the apocalypse, and whoever he's looking for is probably already dead. He tells him to prepare himself mentally for that reality. The man angrily explains that even if someone isn't killed by the crazed attackers, they could still run into a dangerous crowd of survivors. His frustration and concern are evident as he warns about the different threats in their world. Jiang looks surprised and repeats the phrase, dangerous crowd of survivors? He's either confused or concerned. The man explains with a serious expression that a brutal group in the eastern part of the region will do anything to survive, even attacking other survivors without hesitation. He recalls that they encountered this group once before, losing companions to their violent actions. The man smirks and warns that whenever you come across other survivors, you should always stay alert and cautious, no matter what. A younger man yells in shock, warning, "Uncle Lai, watch out," as he sees something dangerous approaching the older man. The man engages in a struggle with a zombie, both of them fighting over a gun as the man tries to defend himself from the attack. The man fires the gun at the zombie, neutralizing the threat in the midst of the struggle. The man stands over the defeated zombie, breathing heavily, and curses out loud in frustration, relieved that the danger has passed. A group of zombies turns their attention toward the man, drawn by the sound of the gunfire. Their aggressive expressions show they are ready to attack. The man realizes the danger and tries to stay calm, gripping his gun tightly while quickly assessing his next move as more enemies approach. The man spots something in the distance and shouts, "I've got it," as he notices a bus that could be their means of escape. The group runs toward the bus with urgency, as the man yells for everyone to get inside quickly to avoid the approaching danger. Jiang reflects on their decision, noting that while running might attract more zombies, the bus is an ideal place to defend themselves. He also realizes that once they're inside, there will be no turning back. Calmly assessing the situation, He gives himself a score of 70 for his quick judgment in this crisis. The man urgently calls out to Jiang, telling him to hurry up as he runs toward the bus while a zombie chases him closely. Jiang barely makes it onto the bus, jumping inside just as the man helps pull him in. The man quickly closes the bus doors and warns Jiang to carefully check every seat to make sure no zombies are hiding inside. The boy responds, panicking as he notices that the zombies haven't given up and are still outside, crowding near the bus. The man, frustrated and panicked, yells, "Damn, were we too slow?" as zombies start banging on the bus window, trying to break in. A group of zombie hands reaches for the bus, aggressively pounding on the side as they try to get inside. The zombies crowded around the bus desperately reach out, as one of them mumbles something ominous, indicating their relentless desire to attack. The man struggles to keep the door closed as a zombie tries to force its way in, shouting that he's losing control of the situation. The man looks surprised as Jiang places his hand on his shoulder, signaling something urgent while a zombie continues to try and break in from behind. Jiang pushes the man back with sudden force, surprising him as he reacts quickly to the dangerous situation. The man, startled by Jiang's strength and decisive action, questions just how strong Jiang is in disbelief. Jiang calmly tells the man that he can no longer hold the door closed. He suggests they rally the team and break the windows to counterattack the incoming threat. The man coughs and gathers his strength while Jiang stands ready, as both prepare to fight back against the incoming zombies. The zombies start breaking through the windows of the bus, shattering the glass as they move closer to attacking the group inside. A crowd of zombies reaches for the bus, trying to climb inside through the broken windows. One of the zombies screams as it makes its way toward the bus, the darkness of the situation closing in. The man fiercely attacks a zombie, yelling, "Die," as he drives his weapon forward in a life or death struggle. A couple of survivors help pull someone inside the bus as the man keeps his gun ready, protecting the group. The man checks his gun, realizing they are running low on bullets, and worries that they don't have enough ammo to deal with the large number of zombies. The man is startled when someone hands him an unexpected item, saying, "Use this," while he looks on, confused and unsure of what it is. Jiang, now armed with a crossbow, looks surprised and questions, "Where did this come from?" as he prepares for the next action. The man responds that he grabbed it without thinking during the chaos, now holding the crossbow firmly, ready to use it. Outside, the zombies scream in frustration as they continue their relentless assault on the bus, determined to break through. The survivors on the bus begin shooting down the zombies from above, yelling insults as they fend off the horde. The survivors stand in front of the bus after successfully fending off the zombie horde, surrounded by fallen bodies as they regroup. One of the younger survivors holds his weapon and exclaims that surviving 2 dangerous situations in a row is no coincidence, claiming they must be the chosen ones of this apocalypse. Jiang calmly advises him to remain cautious and avoid becoming overconfident in these dire circumstances. Under the crescent moon, a distant view of a peaceful-looking Jiang mentions, and someone expresses hope that everything is going smoothly on the other side. The group is walking down a hallway. One of the men volunteers to take the night shift, showing his readiness to help. Another man with glasses looks surprised and asks why the first man is suddenly being so enthusiastic and proactive today. The man, clearly annoyed, snaps back, insisting that he's always been this way and tells the other man to mind his own business. The man with glasses, now confused and a bit nervous, wonders why the first man is overreacting so much to his question. An old man instructs the group to rest, telling the man to be cautious and wake everyone up if there's any trouble during his watch. The man assures him confidently, "Don't worry." The man sits outside at night, gazing up at the moon, and remarks that it's already late, and everyone must be asleep by now. The man stands on a balcony, deep in thought, mentioning that things could get worse and they need to resolve the situation before Jiang returns. The older man is shown peacefully asleep, unaware of what's happening, with his radio communicator resting on the pillow beside him. The older man continues to sleep soundly, unaware of any disturbances or the situation around him. The man stands in the doorway, watching intently, with a serious and focused expression, possibly checking on the older man or thinking about his next steps. Yiming sneaks into Grandpa Sheng's room, making his way toward the armor key. However, Grandpa Sheng wakes up and questions what he's doing. As Yiming punches him, he quickly retreats from the room. Grandpa Sheng shouts, cursing at him and demanding to know what he's trying to accomplish, then orders him to return the key. Shanshan and the others, awakened by the commotion, ask what happened. Grandpa Sheng informs them that Yiming has stolen the armor keys and that they must hurry to stop him. The others chase after Yiming, demanding to know what he's doing. In response, Yiming throws various objects into their path to block their way. Jiang Kai curses, calling him one sneaky bastard, as Yiming rushes through the infirmary. Yiming thinks he might as well go all the way now. Entering the medical room, he cautiously approaches his infected friend, only to be shocked when Chen Chong roars. Yiming wonders why one of Chen Chong's bindings is loose, thinking it's strange, as it had been tightly secured before. He then realizes it's perfect since it saves him the trouble of untying his friend himself. As Zhang Kai and the others arrive near the infirmary, they realize that Yiming let Chen Chong out of the medical room. They question if he understands that he's endangering everyone by doing this. Grandpa Sheng curses, admitting he had never imagined that Yiming could be such a sneaky person and that he'd severely misjudged him. Shanshan anxiously asks what they should do next since all their weapons are locked in the armory. Grandpa Sheng replies that, no matter what, they have to work together to restrain Chen Chong and lock him back in the medical room. He instructs everyone to use the techniques the Mick taught them, warning them to be cautious and not to let Chen Chong bite anyone. With careful coordination, Jiang Kai successfully chokes Chen Chong into submission, and the others restrain him. Jiang Kai confirms that they have him under control, and Grandpa Sheng orders them to tie Chen Chong up securely and return him to the medical room. They push him back into the room and lock the door firmly. Relieved but puzzled by how relatively easy it was to subdue Chen Chong, they speculate that perhaps he was the only threat they'd faced. Grandpa Sheng mutters, frustrated about how much time they've wasted. Meanwhile, Yiming, having already slipped away, emerges from an alley and sarcastically questions who Grandpa Sheng is calling a sneaky bastard. He clarifies that he never found the main stash of weapons, and that there was only one weapon in the armory, but he claims it's more than enough to handle them. He aims the gun at them, ordering them to move to the back room. Jiang Kai, shocked, asks why he's doing this, reminding him that the Mick is their savior. Yiming retorts that a big favor can easily turn into a huge burden, declaring that the Mick saved them once, but now they're practically slaves for life. Grandpa Sheng shakes his head, commenting that some people are simply ingrates by nature and never learn. Yiming barks at them to shut up, but from the window, Chen Chong, holding a key in his hand, watches the exchange and prepares to attack. The scene shifts to the MC, who is being briefed by a policeman. The officer informs him that they're just one more intersection away from the Jinyu mansion. He warns that the area is a maze-like complex, ideal for mutants to hide in, so they'll need to be extremely careful. The Mick nods, listening closely. The policeman adds that once the Mick finds his people, he should head to Rongxiang Garden to meet him. He specifies that the MC's group is located in Building 8 and instructs him to enter through the side gate, not the main entrance. The Mick gives a thumbs up in response, thanking him for the advice. After the Mick departs, someone beside the policeman suggests they should help the MC, pointing out that he saved them earlier. The policeman hesitates, explaining that they have no idea what dangers lie inside the mansion. He emphasizes that if they stumble into a horde of zombies, they'll be doomed. The companion, undeterred, points out that the Mick is likely walking straight into danger himself. The policeman shrugs, saying he did his duty by warning the Mick about the risks, and that it's a shame since the Mick has proven he's quite skilled. Meanwhile, Yang Tao and his ally are strategizing. Noting that the power is out and they have no phone signal, Yang Tao wonders aloud if Zhang managed to complete his task, but ultimately decides it doesn't matter. His lackey grins, saying he's been holding back for far too long and plans to cut loose tonight. Otherwise, he won't be able to sleep. His ally chuckles, agreeing that Zhang is likely dead by now. They agree on their plan to tie up Zhang's wife when they go up, ensuring she won't have a chance to kill herself. They reason that, given the uncertain nature of their lives, they might as well take their opportunities to enjoy what they can while they can. Brother Lai, however, reminds them to be cautious and to make sure the woman survives. Just then, he pauses, noticing something strange. All the zombies downstairs are lying dead. The super henchman opens the door to see what's happening. Meanwhile, he wonders if it's a rescue. Suddenly, he's startled. An extremely fast blade passes through his neck. Before he can react, the man coughs up blood as his head separates from his body. Meanwhile, the men approach Jiang Shen's wife and child. The poor mother orders everyone to leave. Two men smile maliciously. Soon after, one of them says enough and stops, pretending. The woman cries out in despair, "What are you doing? Let him go." Meanwhile, her poor son is pulled away. The wretch slaps her across the face as the boy flies away. The devil on earth states that they are the target. The boy, kneeling, says he will fight with all his might to defend his mother. Suddenly, a man is thrown out the door. The boy reprimands the men and, desperate, yells that they are bad people and asks them to let his mother go, as his father will not forgive them. Suddenly, one of the henchmen, headless, is thrown into the room. The boy screams in fear as he observes the mangled body. The boy continues to be afraid and, staring at a shadow in the doorway, asks, "Who is it?" Then Jiang Zhaoyang finally appears and asks the boy if Jiang Zion is his father. The frightened boy murmurs. The woman despairs and shrinks back. Suddenly, Ling slaps the woman and, furious, yells at her, asking if she's afraid her son will hear. He threatens her, saying that if she doesn't talk, they will have their fun. One of the henchmen says that since there's no sound, he'll go first. He strokes the woman's head as she cries. Then the bedroom door bursts open. One of the henchmen sneeringly comments that the boy has quite a bit of strength. Suddenly, one of their necks is swiftly cut. Ling turns and, looking towards the door, asks why they haven't gotten rid of the boy yet. Then, against all their expectations, one of his henchmen falls in front of them, headless. Lush Zhang wonders what's going on. Then, in the blink of an eye, Jiang Zhaoyang crushes the wretch's head. The wretch flies backward until he hits the wall. Luch Chong, as he receives the impact of our protagonist's blow, spits up blood. One of the henchmen asks our hero who he is. Well, our hero delivers the best kick this guy has ever received in his life. Now at the fortress, Ying holds his pistol and threatens to shoot if they don't get out of there. Shangbo orders the others to do as he says and go to the room he mentioned. He states that the wretch has a gun, and therefore, for now, they will do what he says as they need to think of something. Yiming smiles maliciously and says they think they can plan something, but if he doesn't show some cruelty that day, he will never establish his dominance. The traitor, smiling, says that old Dong will die first. Then he points the gun at the old man. Shan Shan and Zheng Chai cry out desperately. "Grandpa," Ying observes the infirmary door. Meanwhile, he asks what that sound was. Surprised, he asks what's happening and how the infirmary was unlocked. The doorknob keeps turning. He wonders who's there. Suddenly, a zombified Chen Chong appears. They wonder if Chen Chong unlocked the door himself, but they state that it's impossible. Ying observes Chen Chong and, surprised, asks what's happening. Chen Chong, with glowing red eyes, advances towards Ying, drool dripping from his mouth. Ying points the gun at him. Then he says he can't let him live since a zombie used a key to unlock the door. Then he shoots, but to his surprise, the gun misfires. Ying despairs and exclaims that the gun is jammed. Chen Chong advances. Yiming, terrified, asks how this can be happening. The idiot cries for help as he is chewed on by Chen Chong. Then Chen Chong stands up after tearing Ying apart. Chen Chong carries him away in his own hands. The group wonders what's happening there. Zhengyi states that Chen Chong was so calm moments before. Everyone stares at Chen Chong in astonishment. Shangbo, seeing the absurd amount of blood, puts his hand over his mouth. Then the zombie approaches the doorknob with the key. Suddenly, he throws the key to the group. The key falls in front of them, and the zombie simply returns to the infirmary as if nothing had happened. Everyone looks at each other, dumbfounded.
Jiang, in the foreground, wields a gun and opens fire with intense focus as he aims upward. Multiple men scatter and dodge in the background, caught off guard, with one lying dead on the ground. A man, gripping his gun tightly, lets out a loud, intense scream, his eyes wide open as a bullet hits his head, causing him to bleed. Another man hides behind a rock, peering out in surprise. In the background, yet another man is thrown backward, struck by a bullet. A man lunges forward, his face twisted in anger as he shouts, firing his gun with fierce determination. Jiang walks through an open area under the night sky as bullets hit the ground nearby. He stares ahead with a smug expression, his piercing blue eyes reflecting calm determination. A man, gripping his gun tightly, beads of sweat on his face, looks around in frustration. Behind him, Jiang aims his gun from a distance. Another man crouches behind a table, shielding himself as bullets ricochet off its surface with intense force. He braces himself, gripping his gun tightly, clearly caught in a perilous situation as the gunfire intensifies around him. The man shouts in frustration, sweat dripping down his face, angrily yelling, "What the hell is he doing?" He begs not to be shot. The man shouts angrily as he raises his gun, his face contorted in fury and determination. Behind him, another man sits by a concrete barrier. Jiang's eyes widen in surprise, his gaze sharply focused as he registers something unexpected. He swiftly moves his hand, firing his weapon with a focused and determined expression. A man recoils in shock, his face twisted with horror as bright red laser sights focus directly on him. He leans against the table, smirking with a sense of triumph as he grips his gun confidently. In the background, another man lies, blood dripping from his head. A man charges forward, his arm extended as he aims his gun, ready to attack. He stands face to face with Jiang, holding a gun pointed directly at Jiang's face. Despite the threat, Jiang remains calm. The man fires his gun. Jiang swiftly dodges the attack as a bullet narrowly misses his face. The man is shocked by his fast movement. Jiang lunges forward, disarming him with a fierce, determined look. The man is shocked and alarmed, caught off guard by the sudden, powerful move. Jiang brings his face close to his opponent's, staring intensely with unwavering confidence as he holds the gun firmly against him. The man is shocked, sweat dripping down his face. Jiang delivers a final shot with his gun. The man's face contorts in pain, his mouth open in a scream, blood dripping from his head. After the intense struggle, Jiang stands over his defeated opponent, who lies sprawled on the ground, motionless. With his gun slung over his back, Jiang gazes down. He kneels beside the fallen body, searching for anything useful. Later, Jiang enters a building, confidently walking into a dimly lit room framed by the open doorway behind him. 4 armed men stand on either side, preparing for an attack. He glances to the side with a piercing gaze, his expression calm yet filled with resolve. His intense blue eyes convey quiet confidence. Jiang stands calmly at the center as the armed men charge toward him from all directions, weapons raised in attack. Without wasting any time, he kills all of them. He stands with his back to the fallen bodies scattered around him, his posture calm and commanding as he addresses the group ahead. One of the dead men lies on the floor, blood dripping from his face. Jiang smiles calmly as a child excitedly compliments him, clearly impressed by his bravery and skill. Around them, the mother and police officers are shocked by the aftermath of his confrontation. A system window pops up, showing him a new mission with clear objectives. He reads the requirement to rescue 5 survivors, with a reward of 25 points upon completion. Jiang stands beside the officer and a child, all staring down at the defeated man on the floor. Surprised, he questions the identity of these fallen individuals. The officer, visibly tense with a drop of sweat on his face, explains about the Emerald Mountain area. Jiang listens intently, his gaze sharp and serious as he absorbs the information about the location south of the city. The officer calls out to Liu Keo and Chen Jai, who approach him wearing yellow uniforms with determined expressions. As they arrive, they acknowledge the guard, ready to discuss the situation regarding Emerald Mountain with Jiang. One of the men explains to Jiang that a sinister group, equipped with resources and weapons, controls the Emerald Mountain area. They mention that nearly all survivors from the southern part of the city have been drawn into this group's influence. Jiang stands silently in front of Liu Keo and Chen Jai. Jiang closes his eyes, thinking to himself, recalling past memories of a gathering place in the southern part of the city associated with Lai Shoxing and Qi Jing. He wonders if this current situation is connected to them. The man explains that while Emerald Mountain wasn't initially the only gathering place in the southern region, their possession of weapons has made them dominant. Other smaller groups lack the means to defend against their attacks, making resistance nearly impossible. He describes the brutal tactics of the Emerald Mountain group, stating they kill half the people in each gathering they attack. He adds that they take young women and anyone willing to collaborate with them back to their base, painting a grim picture of their methods. Jiang reacts with a fierce expression, his eyes blazing with determination as he resolves to take action against the injustice described. The officer, with a hint of nervousness, looks at Jiang and questions him, sensing his intense resolve. Jiang, calm yet focused, stares forward with unwavering determination, silently preparing for the next step. 3 defeated men lie on the ground, each with a handgun nearby. Jiang addresses Old Lai about collecting their weapons, checking them for additional ammunition, reflecting a strategic approach to gathering resources. Jiang hands over a rifle to Old Lai, offering to leave him with 5 additional bullets as a gesture of trust and support. Surprised by this generosity, Old Lai questions if it's truly intended for him. Jiang speaks with confidence, telling Old Lai that the Emerald Mountain Group won't rest, even with their newly acquired weapons. He instructs the others to hold position for a couple of days while he prepares to confront and eliminate the threat. The man reacts in shock, warning Jiang about the Emerald Mountain Group's overwhelming numbers, which he estimates to be well over a dozen. His face is filled with doubt that Jiang could handle such a formidable force alone. Old Lai urges Jiang to reconsider, suggesting that it's not worth risking his life for them and proposing that they find a safer location instead. He rationalizes that the Emerald Mountain Group is a few kilometers away and unlikely to search the entire city for them. Jiang reassures the others, explaining that his conflict with the Emerald Mountain Group is personal. He adds that in a few days, he will bring a larger vehicle to transport them safely to the eastern part of the city. Old Lai, surprised, questions Jiang about the eastern city. Jiang turns around, explaining that he's established a secure base in the Laocha Leaf District and is currently in need of manpower to help manage it. Old Lai and the others bid farewell to Jiang, urging him and his companions to stay safe. Jiang waves his hand in acknowledgement as he departs with a woman and child, heading into the unknown. 1 hour later, a man sits calmly on a rooftop, shaded by a hat, with his weapon in hand, overlooking a quiet, empty street. 3 lifeless zombies hang grimly in front of a building labeled Emerald Mountain, their forms battered and broken. 4 individuals sit around a large conference table, engaged in a serious discussion. A man with reddish hair and glasses, smoking a cigarette, asks about the unresolved supply issues at Golden Blaze Entertainment City. His expression is calm yet probing. Xiao Lai responds with a confident smile, assuring the man that he has already sent people to handle the situation at Golden Blaze Entertainment City. He says they should be returning with results soon. Another man with a relaxed demeanor points out to Wen Ji that the Golden Blaze area houses many high-end foreign residents, implying the importance of maintaining appearances and resources there. He jokingly suggests they can't just focus on Entertainment City's supplies alone, hinting at a broader responsibility. Xiao Lai grins broadly, addressing Kai Ji and suggesting there's no need to worry, as he has already arranged everything. He assures them that his people will return not only with supplies, but also with any live individuals they encounter. Wen Ji, cigarette in hand, addresses Xiao Lai with a casual yet condescending tone. He remarks that, despite all the tasks given, Xiao Lai has yet to successfully complete even one. Xiao Lai enthusiastically assures Wen Ji that he will definitely handle the task this time, promising his utmost commitment. In the background, Kai Ji, with dark hair, watches with an amused smile, observing his confidence. After the meeting, Xiao Lai and another man stand outside a building, Xiao panting heavily as he tries to catch his breath. The other man, concerned, asks if he is alright, clearly worried about Xiao Lai's condition. Brother Lai, with a tense expression, asks if the 7 individuals have returned. His companion, coughing weakly, informs him that he sent people to check an hour ago, but brings bad news, adding to the growing concern. Under the moonlit sky, Brother Lai reacts in shock upon hearing that all 7 were killed. Frustrated and disbelieving, he questions how Rongyang Garden, supposedly filled with ordinary citizens, could have. A car approaches a large, secluded building at night, casting an ominous shadow under the moonlight. Inside, Yaiming hears the car's arrival and excitedly exclaims that it must be her brother Yang, drawing the attention nearby old man and Jiang Kai. As the car pulls up to the entrance, a system notification appears, marking the mission, taking responsibility as completed and awarding system points. As Yang steps out of the car, Yaiming eagerly greets him, relieved to see him return. The group gathers around, with one of them confirming Yang's identity as Lu Yaiming. Shocked, Yaiming realizes that they all knew his true identity from the start, leaving her visibly surprised and questioning what else has been hidden from her. He instructs Jiang Kai to escort their guests to their rooms before joining him in the infirmary, signaling a moment of rest and recovery for everyone. In the hallway, one of the group questions Yang's prior knowledge of Lu Yaiming's malicious intent, hinting at deeper suspicions. Yang responds cautiously, admitting that he wasn't entirely certain it was Lu Yaiming. Yang reflects on his suspicion, revealing that he was certain one of Jiang Kai's friends had ulterior motives. This revelation shocks Jiang Kai, who becomes visibly disturbed. As Jiang Kai holds a weapon with a startled expression, the weight of Yang's words begins to sink in, hinting at betrayal within their ranks. Jiang Kai inspects the bullets and realizes, to his shock, that they're rubber. This discovery unsettles him, hinting at deeper manipulation in their mission. Nearby, older man speculates about a kid in the infirmary, identified as Chen Chong. Yang explains that Chen Chong isn't an ordinary zombie. He's a rare mutant, introducing an element of danger and mystery tied to this unique being. Yang carefully tests Chen Chong's awareness by asking him to blink 3 times if he understands. Chen Chong responds as instructed, proving his comprehension. Yang continues the test with a simple math question, and Chen Chong blinks in response, confirming his ability to process commands and indicating a retained level of cognition despite his condition. The nature of rare mutants that emerged after the apocalypse. Unlike typical zombies, these mutants possess heightened intelligence, unique abilities, and sometimes fragments of their past memories. Their transformation, triggered by exposure to otherworldly sources, grants them greater potential, making them far more formidable than regular infected beings. Yang remarks on Chen Chong's unique status, acknowledging that he is an exceptionally rare mutant, even among others of his kind. The group stares in shock as they come upon a gruesome scene. A body lies on the ground, lifeless, with blood pooling around it. Chen Chong, now fully alert, lets out a curious sound as he observes the group with a menacing stare, his body covered in injuries yet standing tall. The group watches him in silence, tense and uncertain about his next move, sensing the potential danger he poses even in his weakened state. Yang, displaying a calm yet cold resolve, instructs the others to end Chen Chong's threat without restraint. As Chen Chong stands, one of the group members desperately holds him back but struggles against his strength, while the others watch, visibly tense and bracing for the worst. One of the group members, filled with hope, calls out to Chen Chong, wondering if he still remembers him as a brother. Chen Chong, visibly agitated, responds only with a low growl, hinting at the internal struggle between his past identity and his current mutated state, leaving his former friend in tense uncertainty. The man hesitates, seemingly lost in thought as he processes Chen Chong's response. Suddenly, with a burst of frustration and desperation, he lunges at Chen Chong, shouting in disbelief. Chen Chong reacts with confusion, caught off guard by his former friend's aggressive approach. Frustrated, the man exclaims that Chen Chong, even in his zombie state, seems to remember his old habits of not keeping his hands to himself. Upon receiving a notification, Yang realizes he's unlocked a hidden achievement for acquiring a mutant companion, an unexpected bonus that rewards him with extra system points. Lying back with a satisfied grin, he muses on his newfound points and decides to explore the shop for potential upgrades. As he browses, he's pleasantly surprised to see the inventory includes various supply boxes, each with unique attributes and costs. His eyes widen in astonishment when he spots a level 2 supply box, a rarity he's never encountered before. This discovery excites him, knowing that such a high-tier item could provide him with substantial resources or gear, likely giving him a considerable edge in his journey ahead. Enthusiastic about this fortuitous upgrade, he contemplates his next steps, eager to maximize the potential of his newly acquired achievement and resources. Yang examines the high-priced level 2 supply box, realizing that at 50 points, it's a significant investment, one he isn't quite ready to make yet. Deciding to be cautious with his resources, he opts to redeem the more affordable level 1 boxes first to conserve space and points. He selects the Lifesaver and Armed Deterrent supply boxes, each costing only 5 points. As he successfully redeems them, his remaining points decrease, but he feels reassured by his wise choice. The items materialize, their glow filling the room, hinting at the potential advantages they'll provide. Satisfied with his decision, Yang prepares to inspect his new gear, knowing that every resource counts as he advances in his unpredictable journey. Yang opens the Lifesaver and Armed Deterrent supply boxes, eagerly examining their contents. The Lifesaver box provides an interdimensional infection blocker, capable of preventing otherworldly infections but unable to reverse completed mutations, a potentially life-saving tool in their world. The Armed Deterrent box rewards him with a powerful Barrett M82 sniper rifle and 10.50 BMG bullets, leaving him awestruck by the firepower packed in a level 1 box. Amazed by these resources, he wonders what the higher-tier boxes could offer, jokingly imagining himself wielding a tank. As he contemplates the infection blocker's potential, especially for those on the brink of turning into zombies, his determination strengthens. Motivated to open the coveted Level 2 box, he checks his ongoing mission to recruit survivors from Rongxiang Garden, a task that promises 25 points upon completion. With renewed focus, Yang resolves to finish the mission the next day, excited by the thought of unlocking even greater rewards that could significantly boost his chances of survival in the harsh world he inhabits. In the quiet of the night, a helicopter flies over the high walls of a secure facility. As morning breaks, a group of individuals gathers in the open courtyard of a heavily fortified building under the clear blue sky. Yang addresses the group with a strict directive, emphasizing that everyone must dedicate at least an hour each day to shooting practice. This commitment to skill building is evident as they line up with determination, each member focused on honing their aim. Their collective shots strike various targets, creating bursts of impact, symbolizing their unity and resolve to survive and protect each other in the challenging days ahead. Yang instructs Sheng to coordinate with Jiang Kai to prepare additional rooms, anticipating the arrival of more survivors from Rongxiang Garden, whom he plans to bring back later. Uncle Sheng assures Yang of their readiness, expressing confidence in managing the base. Turning to Chen Chong, Yang commands him to follow, signaling that he has a crucial role in the upcoming mission, as Chen Chong emits a low growl, indicating his compliance yet retaining his primal, mutated nature. As Yang and Chen Chong make their way down an empty highway, their vehicle attracts a flock of cawing crows, adding an eerie atmosphere to their journey. They soon stop and step out, only to encounter an individual sprawled on the ground, seemingly thrown or fallen with a loud thud. Yang and Chen Chong stand over him, observing the situation. Inside the bus, a zombie growls at Yang with a menacing posture, its hands reaching out aggressively. Yang remains unfazed, his gaze steady as he assesses the situation. Meanwhile, Chen Chong takes action outside the bus, tossing other threats to the ground with ease, displaying his own formidable strength. A group eagerly waits outside a large building, one member impatiently questioning the delay. Suddenly, someone spots the approaching vehicle, and excitement ripples through the group as they shout for Boss Lai to get ready. Boss Lai, visibly frustrated, clutches a cigarette and angrily asserts his disbelief that Rongxiang Garden cannot be taken down, especially with the large number of men at his disposal. With a powerful command, "Let's go!" Boss Lai's vehicle speeds forward, launching over a ramp as his team holds on, ready for the imminent assault. The zombie surrounds a fallen girl on the street, as a more zombies stands nearby, observing. One of the zombies suddenly turns its head sharply, its eyes wide and filled with an inhuman hunger. Its gaping mouth twitches, emitting a low growl, drawing the attention of the others as their bodies jerk unnaturally. Without warning, the zombies are violently flung into the air, crashing against the truck. The force scatters them, their lifeless bodies colliding with the vehicle, leaving behind deep dents and broken glass. The chaos spills onto the highway as a speeding bus swerves desperately to avoid the carnage. A towering apartment building. Inside one of the apartments, the group sits in a circle, their expressions weary yet alert. They exchange hurried whispers while eating, trying to plan their next steps as sunlight streams through the windows. The young man suddenly perks up, his face lighting up with excitement as he hears the sound of a vehicle outside. He exclaims that it must be someone coming to rescue them, while the others exchange skeptical, wary glances. The officer holding a rifle gestures for everyone to stay silent. He insists on checking the situation himself before anyone makes a move, his calm but firm demeanor keeping the group from acting recklessly. He peers cautiously out of the window, sweat dripping down his face as he scans the quiet street below. Outside, a group of armed men gather near a pickup truck, checking their weapons. They point toward the tall apartment building, identifying it as their next target, their intentions clear from their sharp movements and loaded guns. Brother Lai, commanding presence, shouts orders to his group, urging them to move quickly. The soldiers respond immediately, gripping their weapons tightly as they prepare for an assault. Back inside, the officer realizes the intruders aren't friendly. His face hardens as he declares their true identity, a gang of ruthless looters from a nearby settlement. His warning silences the room as fear spreads among the survivors. One man smirks confidently, pointing out that they now have firearms to fight back against the invaders. The officer steps forward, formulating a quick strategy to deal with the approaching threat. He insists that everyone take their assigned positions, while he prepares to head to the rooftop for a better vantage point. The invaders move closer, their vantage point allowing them to scope the building. One of them points out the distance, ensuring they are just within range to strike their targets effectively. With a commanding gesture, Brother Lai raises his firearm, signaling the group to prepare for an assault. The team aligns behind him, their faces devoid of hesitation as they aim their weapons at the building. Inside the apartment, the survivors spot the attackers from the window. Shouting in alarm, they quickly duck, narrowly avoiding the barrage of bullets that rains down on their position. The gunfire echoes through the air as the invaders unleash a relentless volley, shattering windows and tearing through walls. Their precision and firepower force the survivors into a desperate scramble for cover. The man invaders charges ahead, shouting commands as he dodges the shattered glass. His determination is evident as he leads the offensive, undeterred by the chaos around him. Moments later, he halts and issues new orders. He instructs his team to surround the building, warning them to fire at anyone who dares to show themselves. Standing in front of his crew, he raises a megaphone, preparing to deliver a chilling ultimatum to the survivors. As the leader speaks through the megaphone, a sudden gunshot pierces the air, striking one of his men in the head. The group is caught off guard, panic spreading as they realize they're under fire. Chaos ensues as one of the attackers collapses to the ground, his weapon falling from his hand. Brother Lai and his subordinates react quickly, scanning their surroundings for the sniper. Another shot rings out, hitting Brother Lai in the leg, and he stumbles backward in agony. His cries echo through the courtyard, urging his team to find cover as the sniper continues their assault. The officer retreat, their weapons still drawn, while the survivors inside the building press their advantage. The security guard at the window reloads his rifle, taking aim again with steady determination. Frustrated, Brother Lai growls in anger, realizing their intel underestimated the survivors' firepower. He clenches his teeth, vowing not to retreat even as his men waver in the face of heavy resistance. From a nearby alley, one of the invaders whispers to their leader, suggesting they retreat. Brother Lai reluctantly agrees, signaling his team to pull back while vowing to return with greater force. One of the invaders panics and begins running ahead, shouting in fear. The leader yells at him to wait for the signal. Moments later, the runner is struck by gunfire, collapsing lifelessly onto the pavement. His abrupt fall serves as a grim warning to the others as they hesitate, caught between fear and loyalty. Brother Lai clenches his fists in frustration and shouts to rally his group. He demands that everyone charge together on his count. With his signal, the group rushes forward, their movements chaotic yet determined. The tension thickens as bullets fly, leaving destruction in their wake. Amidst the commotion, he smirks confidently, realizing the survivors' defenses are dwindling. However, as he reloads his weapon, his mind races to figure out their next move. Gunfire erupts again, striking down more of his men. Brother Lai takes cover, dodging a close shot, as his frustration begins to show. He curses under his breath, realizing the situation is spiraling out of control. Despite the mounting losses, his resolve remains unshaken as he calculates his next step. The officer reloads his rifle calmly, keeping a sharp eye on the fleeing invaders. His composed demeanor contrasts with the chaos unfolding below. The invaders rush to their vehicle, shouting for the driver to start the engine. Their desperation is evident as they scramble to escape the hail of bullets from the survivors. One of the attackers, left behind, waves frantically as the truck speeds off. He yells for them to stop, but his pleas are drowned out by the sound of gunfire. A bullet whizzes past, knocking off his cap as he stumbles in shock. His expression turns to fear as more shots close in, forcing him to sprint for cover. The fleeing truck weaves through the street while bullets rain down on it. The attackers inside huddle low, trying to shield themselves from the relentless assault. A bus speeds through the highway, weaving between cars with precision. Inside the bus, Jiang sits behind the wheel, his sharp gaze fixed ahead. He mutters something under his breath. From an overhead view, another vehicle crosses paths with the bus at an intersection. The tension rises as the two vehicles barely avoid colliding. He grips the steering wheel tightly, his expression turning serious. He mutters about finishing the task at hand, prioritizing the mission over everything else. The bus comes to a halt near a residential complex, its engine rumbling softly in the silence. Stepping out of the bus, Jiang observes the area with a calm but calculating demeanor. He notices a fallen figure nearby, their cap and weapons scattered on the ground, suggesting they were fleeing. His companion stands silently beside him. The tension builds as their focus shifts to the lifeless body, contemplating their next move. A chilling grin spreads across the companion's face, their expression sending a shiver through the air. The unsettling sound of laughter escapes their lips, breaking the silence. Jiang smirks and teasingly asks his companion if he wants to eat. With a devilish grin, he permits his companion to feed, remarking that it's better than letting others take advantage of them later. The companion's eyes glow menacingly, his expression twisted with hunger and anticipation. He casually instructs his companion to meet him at the base of Building 8 after finishing the task. The companion lunges at the lifeless body on the ground, ready to devour it. He calmly enjoys his meal.
This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.